Chapter 1207. Yu Jing knew that he couldn't recover this time. He robbed the fire spring openly and didn't kill the witnesses on the spot. In any case, he couldn't recover. Even without Han Fei, it was impossible for him to go back to the Ice God Gorge. In fact, as soon as this pledge was made, Yu Jing's way had already been cut off. Although the White Shell Royal City occupied a large area, he couldn't stay in the realm of ice any longer. Otherwise, he would be easily crushed to death. Even in the entire White Shell Royal City, Yu Jing wasn't sure if he could survive there. As for the Blood Sea Divine Wood, he might be accepted if he went there as a Tao-seeking state cultivator. But the women of the Blood Sea Divine Wood were usually good to those who surrendered to the White Shell Royal City. There was no reason why he could survive on the Blood Sea Divine Wood's side. Yu Jing took a deep breath and said, "My lord, you should know that I have nowhere to go after this pledge of allegiance is made. In this case, as long as you don't kill me, based on my understanding of the White Shell Royal City over the years, the Ice God Gorge is definitely not the only place I can loot." Oh. Han Fei raised his head, glanced at Yu Jing, and then said leisurely, "The royal city today can't be compared to the prosperous times. 100,000 years ago, I was able to fight Grand Venerable Tianqing, the strongest master of the Sky Clan, for 3,000 rounds. Now, this shabby place is in such a mess. How can a human being cause such a stir when he becomes a venerable? This is depravity." Yu Jing really wanted to roll his eyes. Wasn't it 10,000 years just now? How come it's 100,000 years now? Forget it, it's tens of thousands of years if you say so. In any case, I can't beat you. Whatever you say. Han Fei waved his hand and said, "Let's go. Since there are no resources in this fire spring, let's go to the Ice God Gorge." Han Fei had always believed that as long as he robbed fast enough, even if the other party found out, so what? With the speed of these law enforcers, by the time they went to the front line to inform the strong masters to return, he might have already robbed the Ice God Gorge. As for the people Yu Jing didn't kill, Han Fei still didn't plan to kill. In the Shuemu heaven, a sea spirit state expert was actually nothing. Different from the Yin Yang heaven, a sea spirit state expert could dominate the sea, not here. The core forces here were all explorers. After he came to the Waterwood heaven, Han Fei realized that if all the creatures in a domain worked together, the number of experts that could be accumulated would be much more than he had imagined. Rip. Han Fei tore open the void and glanced at Yu Jing. "What's your fastest speed? Let's take a look." Yu Jing's heart skipped a beat. He didn't care about anything else and directly ran at full speed. As a rather unique beginner Tao-seeking peak, its speed was one of its greatest advantages. Of course, it would be best if he could get rid of Han Fei. However, as soon as the fish flew out, it saw Han Fei following it leisurely and frowning. "Why are you so slow, Yu Jing?" Perhaps because Han Fei was used to the Heavenly Oasis divine walking technique, Yu Jing's speed was ridiculously slow in his eyes. Even if Yu Jing's full speed was actually half of his peak speed as a law enforcer, Han Fei still felt it was too slow. Han Fei roared, grabbed the fish well, and rushed out with a swish. Almost in an instant, Yu Jing was shocked to find that Han Fei's speed was more than 5 times faster than his. At that time, he was completely stunned. Although Han Fei had always said that he had lived for tens of thousands of years, Yu Jing thought that Han Fei was bragging. Did he really live that long? Was he really that powerful? Did he have to possess Yudafeng? However, at this moment, he was surprised to find that Han Fei had soared to a speed close to the peak of the Tao-seeking level with the strength of a beginner. Gulp. Yu Jing was full of doubts. Is Han Fei really a prehistoric big demon? Damn you, Yu Dafeng. How did you meet such a prehistoric big demon? It doesn't matter that you were possessed, but you dragged me into it. The Ice God Gorge was the origin of the name of the realm of ice. The Ice God Gorge was formed by countless icebergs. Some floated on the sea, and some were connected to the undersea mountains like normal mountains. As for the core, it was where the name of the ice god gorge came from. It was two super icebergs, or ice layers, that extended from the bottom of the sea to the surface. The ice god gorge and the surrounding icebergs hadn't melted for tens of thousands of years, and the sea demons had already opened up countless caves. Here, even though countless creatures had rushed to the ice and snow city wall, a sea demon city had already been formed about 30,000 kilometers away from the ice god gorge, also known as Iceberg City. Only then did Han Fei know that Iceberg City was a village one level lower than the ice god gorge. Han Fei and Yu Jing concealed their identities and strength at this moment, hiding on a mermaid statue carved from ice cones. Han Fei licked the corner of his mouth. Where is the most valuable place here? Yu Jing said respectfully, there is a small amount of spiritual spring and materials in each refining room. The rest belongs to the free trading valley. That's the property of a big demon at the peak of the Tao-seeking state. There is a big battle on the front line today, so there are not many people in the free trading valley today. I just don't know how many resources there are in the free trading valley. Han Fei immediately thought of something. Is this a place similar to the logistics division? That's a dignified logistics division. How could Han Fei not be tempted? Although he knew that the core of the Ice God Gorge was not a gathering place for ordinary people. However, this didn't mean that these ordinary sea demons had fewer resources. As the saying went, the power of the masses was huge. Even if each person contributed a drop of spiritual spring, it would be an astronomical number. Han Fei's eyes lit up. Okay, let's rob this free trading valley. Yu Jing said with some embarrassment, Master, you know, this place is very close to the Ice God Gorge after all. Under normal circumstances, it's okay for there to be no one guarding it. However, yesterday, it seems that someone ambushed and killed sea spirit realm sea demons in the realm of ice. So, there must be a strong master guarding the free trading valley at this time. Han Fei didn't scan it with his perception. Now that he was an explorer, the strength of his soul was not as high as it used to be. Although it still seemed abnormal, if there was really a peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon guarding it, the probability of him being detected was very high. However, he wouldn't be stupid if he didn't make use of his allies. Han Fei immediately asked in his heart, Old Turtle, is there a peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon inside? The old tortoise said in a deep voice, Can you stop calling me Old Tortoise? My title is Primitive Emperor. Han Fei said impatiently, Old Yuan, okay? Hurry up, I'm robbing you. Can't you be more careful? The old turtle grunted, looking quite unhappy. There is one peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon, one advanced Tao-seeking realm demon, and no intermediate or beginner demon. They must have gone out to fight. Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Old Yuan, how about one for each of us? The peak-level one belongs to you, and the advanced one belongs to me? The old turtle said angrily, I only have a wisp of soul now, and I was seriously injured by you. At this moment, I have no strength. Its vitality belongs to you. Han Fei naturally had a way to deal with the old turtle. As soon as he said this, the old turtle immediately changed his mind. Okay. Han Fei curled his lips. What can you do if I give you some vitality? Weren't you almost sucked dry by the calabash when you were in your peak state? Han Fei glanced at Yu Jing and said, I'm going to kill the peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon in the valley and the small fries who aren't even at the peak level. Hee hee. You can try to escape. Yu Jing was dumbfounded. Are you dreaming? Even if you are really a prehistoric big demon, how can you kill a peak-level Tao-seeking realm demon? However, with a swish, Han Fei tore open the void. Yes, Han Fei didn't try to hide himself. Instead, he simply tore open the void and escaped. After all, the two sides could be said to be close, but they could also be said to be far. They were more than 2,000 li apart. Huh. For a peak-level Tao-seeking realm powerhouse, 2,000 kilometers was definitely not a very long distance. At the moment when Han Fei tore open the void, the half-mermaid who was cultivating in the ice valley suddenly opened his eyes. When he looked at the void, he saw that the void 100 kilometers away from him was torn open, and a Dao-seeking realm creature appeared. Ha! You are Yu Dafeng, right? Han Fei was helpless. It seems that the role I played is quite famous. Why does everyone know me? He just ignored the fact that no matter how weak the Dao-seeking realm was, it was still a Dao-seeking realm creature, not a muscle that could be seen everywhere. It was only natural that he was recognized. Han Fei didn't answer but rushed to the free trading valley in a panic. This was a big iceberg. Maybe the sea monster was too lazy to build a house for himself, so he made a big hole in the iceberg and used it as a warehouse. Outside the warehouse, there was an array. Han Fei looked at the defense array and didn't care. Han Fei responded to the void, "Master, something big happened. Has Yu Jing come to the city?" Suddenly, the advanced Dao-seeking realm sea monster said, "Yu Jing? Didn't he just go out? I checked him when he passed by here." What happened? Han Fei stopped outside the array and said with a gloomy face, "Master, Yu Jing just looted the fire spring. He betrayed us." Huh? What happened? The shark at the advanced Dao-seeking state swam out of the void, a little shocked. Han Fei grinned. "Because I asked him to loot it, hee. Not good, retreat." In the valley, there was a roar, and Han Fei saw a spear piercing at him through the void. However, Han Fei, who was already prepared, certainly wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. He twisted his body and appeared next to the shark. The law of gravity descended, the void lines burst out, and Snowmorn pierced the shark that had just opened its mouth to counterattack. Puchi. Unfortunately, Han Fei's series of actions were too fast. The shark was killed in the next second while waiting for the answer. Who could he complain to about this grievance? Someone in the valley roared, "Who are you?" Chapter 1208. The peak-level Dao-seeking sea demon was shocked. How strong was Yu Dafeng? How could he kill Qing Sha, who was an advanced Dao-seeking state expert, in one blow? Just when the peak-level Dao-seeking sea demon was hesitating, Han Fei's body twisted slightly and he appeared in the array. "How dare you!" The half-mermaid's expression changed drastically. How did this guy come in? The law of space, a law of space that could break through the restrictions of the array. How could Han Fei, a beginner Dao-seeking state expert, face a peak-level Dao-seeking state expert alone? Therefore, the moment Han Fei came in, the half-mermaid's heart sank and he thought to himself, "Did I fall into someone's trap?" Sure enough, just when he wanted to retreat, a thick black fog suddenly emerged from the surrounding space. The half-mermaid roared, unfolded its fishtail, and whipped at the void. However, he had no idea who he was facing. At first, even a venerable didn't dare to enter the black fog when they saw it, let alone a peak-level Dao-seeking sea demon. Ha ha ha! What a strong vitality! Han Fei looked on coldly, full of disdain. It seemed that when he possessed him last time, this old turtle said the same thing. Now, he was still talking about this. Not creative at all. From the looks of it, becoming a demon and whatnot was just a bluff. However, looking at the thick black fog, Han Fei felt his blood freeze. Wasn't this old guy locked in the depths of his sea of consciousness by the demon purification pot? What? You can come out now. Suddenly, Han Fei heard a voice in his heart, "Don't be surprised. My divine soul is still in your body. This black fog is just an ominous aura that I control to absorb vitality. The ominous aura that I summon across the air can trap him for at most 3 seconds and absorb no more than 1,000 years of his lifespan. So, you may need to take action." Han Fei couldn't help but be surprised. Is this possible? Han Fei sighed. This old turtle is a bit fierce. Summoning an aura across the air can swallow 1,000 years of lifespan of a peak-level Dao-seeking state expert. Fortunately, he had the demon purification pot to suppress it. Otherwise, he might not even know how he died. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. The black fog exploded with a loud bang. Following that, a shadowy figure rushed out from the black fog. However, as soon as the half-mermaid tore apart the black fog, it saw Udafan looking at it with a smile. Roar! Inside the valley, there were hundreds of beasts running amok. Under the impact of his soul, Han Fei held the embroidery needle and smashed the Monkey King's 3,000 strikes. Bang, 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 in the blink of an eye, a half-mermaid at the peak-level Dao-seeking state was blown up. 80% of his bones were shattered, and his dantian was pierced and nailed to the ground. Han Fei said to the old turtle, "If we kill him immediately, it will definitely attract the attention of the venerable, right? Once you've swallowed enough of his life force, spare his life." The old tortoise casually grunted in acknowledgement. In the void, a black claw was piercing the half-mermaid. The latter was terrified. He couldn't even self-destruct. When had he ever thought about it? One day, would he be nailed to the ground in his own territory? And Han Fei had already reached out and picked up the half-mermaid's sun-moon shell. At this moment, he was looking at the randomly classified resources around him, feeling that he was about to drool. Sea monsters shouldn't be so careful about the division of resources. There were only more than 100 kinds of things piled separately here. In addition to a huge spiritual spring pool and a pool of spirit awakening fluid, there were dozens of unrefined stones, spiritual energy fruits, and energy fruits. The rest was relatively random. Anyway, there were a lot of them. He didn't know if people who had transcended the tribulation were particularly good at arithmetic. Han Fei just scanned with his perception and got the rough data at a glance. There are only less than 5 million caddies of spiritual spring, 300,000 caddies of spirit awakening fluid, about 60,000 spiritual energy fruits, about 30,000 energy fruits, and 20,000 other spiritual fruits. In addition, there are no ultra-quality divine weapons, only one high-quality divine weapon, 12 mid-quality, 39 low-quality. As for the pile of messy minerals, Han Fei directly ignored them. Han Fei rubbed his head. What should I do? Now I don't seem to have any concept of money. Although this batch of materials in front of him was several times worse than the materials he had accumulated. However, it wasn't easy for him to accumulate those materials. And these were what he got on the second day he came to the Waterwood Heaven. Wow! Don't panic. It shouldn't be a problem to exchange these things for 3 drops of the Spring of Life. Haha! The old turtle sneered in his heart and roared, "Do you really think you can exchange for the Spring of Life as you want? Do you want to exchange for 3 drops with these things?" Han Fei looked dumbfounded. "Didn't I exchange for 10 drops before?" The old turtle said leisurely, "That's just because they took care of you because you are about to transcend the tribulation. When you reach a certain level, you will find that these things are at most a little useful to creatures in the explorer realm. Even, once you become a peak-level explorer, these things are almost no different from garbage. If you really want to exchange for them in terms of value, these things can only be exchanged for 1 drop of the Spring of Life, not to mention those you robbed before." The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "What do you know?" "Not everyone was an expert. I can't use them, but you don't allow me to take care of humans?" Han Fei quickly put all these resources into his pocket. The Spring of Life. 1 drop was also love. Then if I rob another 10 such warehouses, won't I be able to exchange for 10 drops? A strange look flickered in Han Fei's eyes. For others, this pile of things might not be of much use. But for him, it was not necessarily so. He had the demon purification pot. In the past, he hadn't discovered it and felt that deducing cultivation methods and combat skills with spiritual energy consumed too much spiritual energy. But now, Han Fei felt that spiritual energy was probably the easiest thing to get in this world. Although the consumption of deduction had begun to be measured in units of hundreds of millions. However, there were many ways to get spiritual energy. First, set a small goal and get 10 billion points of spiritual energy. The total amount was enough for him to deduce most of the cultivation methods and combat skills he had. After collecting the resources in this free trading valley, Han Fei perceived that a peak-level law enforcer had come to the outside of the array. The man respectfully held a sun-moon shell and said, "Lord Tooth, Lord Green Shark, these are the resources collected this month." Han Fei was overjoyed. "I'm leaving, but someone is still sending me resources." And the Lord Tooth, who was nailed to the ground by Han Fei, widened his eyes, feeling very aggrieved and seemed to want to struggle. Smack! Han Fei knocked it out with a slap and disappeared with a twist of his body. The next moment, when Han Fei reappeared, there was a dead half-mermaid in his hand. Han Fei threw this person to the ground and stored the sun-moon shell in to forge the universe. Han Fei narrowed his eyes and said, "It seems that people often come to this place. Since I'm here, shouldn't I do something?" The old turtle said carelessly, "Time is running out. When the battle is over, you won't have a chance." The old turtle was speechless. Yesterday, he had tricked this kid into robbing the ice god gorge. Now, it had only been a day, and this brat really came. Moreover, the robbery was very thorough. Looking at Han Fei, who was drawing arrays, the old turtle felt that if this kid became a king, he would probably go to the extreme of the demonic path. At this moment, Yu Jing was hesitating whether to leave or not. If he left, what if Han Fei won and caught up with him? Besides, Han Fei said that he had done something to his soul. Was it a big problem? If he didn't leave, what if Han Fei couldn't win? While he was hesitating, a voice transmission suddenly sounded in his mind, "Ha, you haven't left yet. You have passed this test. Okay, there is only a peak-level Dao-seeking demon and a shark in the valley, which have been killed by me. Remember to seize the opportunity to rob those refining shops when there's a commotion in the valley later." Yu Jing shuddered and subconsciously said, "Yes, sir." Yu Jing was a little dumbfounded. How long has it been? Only half an hour. The peak-level Dao-seeking demon guarding this place died. Who was guarding it? He didn't know. However, the shark that Han Fei mentioned should be Lord Green Shark. Thinking of this, Yu Jing felt his mouth go dry. Qing Sha, a dignified high-level Dao-seeking realm cultivator, had actually died silently just like that? He didn't even feel the fluctuation of the void. However, Yu Jing finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he didn't run away. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Boom! All of a sudden, a terrifying wave of spiritual qi spread out from thousands of miles away. Yu Jing immediately tore open the void and walked over. However, as soon as Yu Jing came out, a long and deep voice roared, "Today, I will become a venerable. Everyone in the city, quickly go to the outside of the free trading valley and feel the baptism of Taoism." Wow, become a venerable. Is Lord Yu going to become a venerable? Great news! Lord Yu is going to become a venerable. Someone exclaimed, "Hurry, this is a great opportunity. The Taoism is mysterious and ordinary people can't see it." Someone shouted, "Baptism of Taoism. I didn't expect Lord Yu to be so generous." The scene of becoming a venerable can be seen by tens of thousands of people. There were also a few people who were puzzled. Is this the case? Why does it seem different from the rumors? Someone was surprised. Can Taoism be baptized? Yu Jing was stunned for a moment, and a voice suddenly shouted in his mind, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and give it to me. Take all the resources you can get." Yu Jing shivered again and was shocked. He was thinking, this person can create a false Taoism. It can be seen that this person is definitely a prehistoric demon. Besides, Lord Yu was a veteran peak-level Dao-seeking cultivator. How could he die so quietly? Half an hour later, when Han Fei attracted the attention of thousands of creatures, Yu Jing stole a lot of resources. Outside the iceberg warehouse in the free trading valley, a strange melody sounded, and the colorful light was eye-catching. Someone was shocked. What kind of Taoism is this? It seems to be able to connect to the sky. Someone sighed. Hurry up and sit cross-legged. This is a once-in-a-century wonder. You must have a good understanding of it. Someone grinned. It's funny that Shui Mutian became a venerable alone and caused a war. He must think he is great. Who knows that there will be another venerable in the Ice God Gorge? While these people were talking, Han Fei had taken back 9 sounds, fire seed, and the others and suddenly appeared next to Yu Jing. Yu Jing was stealing from a weapon shop. Seeing Han Fei suddenly appear, he was a little stunned. Master, you. Aren't you going to become a venerable? Bullshit. Let's go. BAM, rumble. As soon as Yu Jing said that, a terrifying explosion resounded for 1,000 kilometers, and the sea was shaking and surging. Chapter 1209. There had never been such a terrifying explosion in the Ice God Gorge. It couldn't even be described as a mushroom cloud. That was because the entire area of the trading valley had exploded. The surrounding area was blown up, and at least 10 nearby ice mountains were blown up into pieces in an instant. When Han Fei and Yu Jing drilled out of the void thousands of miles away, they could still feel the terrifying impact coming at them, and a large area of the ice layer under them cracked and collapsed. Above the sky, large chunks of hailstones poured down like small bombs. Yu Jing looked at the indifferent Han Fei in shock and was speechless. What the hell did he do? How did he cause such a terrifying explosion? Han Fei nodded in satisfaction. Although he felt a little pained, he didn't suffer a loss. At the last moment just now, Han Fei planned to escape directly. Anyway, he had already made a lot of money. However, on second thought, what the old turtle said didn't seem to be wrong. He didn't seem to have a great need for these spiritual springs now. After robbing the land of fire springs and the free trading valley, he had accumulated as many as 7 million caddies of spiritual spring. This didn't include some that Yu Jing had grabbed during the opportunity. In short, at the last moment, Han Fei spared no effort to trap 5 million caddies of spiritual spring in the array and forcefully detonated it. What did 5 million caddies of spiritual spring mean? That was 5 billion points of spiritual energy. No one would do this even if they didn't take the spiritual spring as money. There were 2 reasons why Han Fei chose to do this. First of all, this tribulation battle was caused by him. Then, there was the matter of Yi Yuchen entering the Tao. Now, the situation on the battlefield in the waterwood sky was tense. Logically speaking, he should help out by making a move and attracting some of the attention. Otherwise, if he borrowed someone else's place to transcend the tribulation, he would cause big trouble for them. Then, he turned around and ran away. That would be too heartless. However, it was really difficult to attract the attention of a strong master. A venerable wouldn't care much about the death of a few Tao-seeking state demons. It could be said that a third of the sea demons' gathering place that occupied a radius of nearly 10,000 kilometers had been destroyed, not to mention the number of sea demons. Besides, Han Fei was used to fishing in troubled waters. Only when there was a commotion here would he have a chance to rob other places. After all, the most important part of the Ice God Gorge was the gorge itself. At this moment, the gathering place of the Ice God Gorge's sea demons was in a mess. The epicenter of the explosion, which covered an area of about 3,000 miles, was directly crushed into pieces. Within 500 miles of the core, even sea spirit realm beings would find it difficult to escape. He was directly blasted into smithereens by the terrifying power of the explosion. Not even his remains were left. As for the 500-kilometer range to the 1,000-kilometer range, the total destructive power was as high as 60%. In other words, in this explosion, Han Fei killed an astronomical number of sea demons. At this moment, in the void above the ice wall, 5 venerable ones were fighting. At the moment when the Ice God Gorge exploded, a sea demon venerable shouted angrily, "Bastard, I didn't expect the Shuemu heaven to be so despicable." A clam girl shouted, "The realm of ice hasn't fought in 100 years. This time, you dare to go deep into the Ice God Gorge? I'd like to see which one dares to attack the territory of our sea clan." On the Shuemu heaven's side, a big frost bird, at this moment, looked dumbfounded and said to a human venerable next to it, "Did we have such a plan? Why didn't I know?" The human venerable replied in confusion, I don't think so. Everyone was standing on the battlefield, and the war was in a critical state. Where would they find the time to arrange for people to sneak attack the Ice God Gorge? However, this timing could be said to be perfect. As soon as the Venerable of the Ice God Gorge arrived, something happened there. It seems that our people have already planned it and even hid it from us. Among the 3 Venerables of the Sea Clan, the old tortoise man fell into a trace of confusion. Wait! I searched it myself. I chased them all the way to the ice wall. Why did something happen in the rear? The human Venerable said to him telepathically, "Send a Venerable. The realm of ice won't stop fighting today." While the martial supremacies were competing, 2 illusionary figures stood high up in the sky. One was a beautiful woman, and the other was a cold young man. If Han Fei were here, he would definitely recognize her. Isn't she the Life Queen? Since he could confront the Life Queen face to face, the identity of the young man was not hard to imagine. When the terrifying explosion shook the world in the realm of ice, both of them looked in the direction of the realm of ice. The cold man focused his eyes, as if he wanted to see through the spatial mist, and directly set his vision on the place where the explosion happened. However, something unexpected happened. The heavenly secrets there were chaotic, and he couldn't see anything. Not only the cold man, but the Life Queen also couldn't see through it. Huh? The Life Queen frowned slightly. A place that even a king couldn't see through could only mean that someone in that place had disturbed the sky with the heavenly secrets. That was why she couldn't see through it. The cold man snorted and glanced around. When he saw Jing, in the dark warport, he frowned. I'm curious, which Venerable of the Waterwood Heaven is doing this? The Life Queen smiled but didn't say anything. How could she not know what kind of Venerables there were in the Waterwood Heaven? The only one that can avoid my own detection is the Bug King, there is no second one. However, the Worm King was fighting in the dark warport at this moment. In other words, it wasn't a Venerable who was making trouble in the Ice God Gorge. But could ordinary explorers go to the Ice God Gorge? Even if they went to the Ice God Gorge, a peak-level explorer wouldn't be able to make such a big noise. The Life Queen's heart skipped a beat as she had a guess. She glanced around again. This time, she didn't look at the people on the Ice God Gorge's side, but at the wisp of green over there. Jing's venerable token. It's really him. There was no need to speculate about this kind of thing. This was only the second day Han Fei came to the Waterwood Heaven, and big events happened one after another. Plundering the realm of ice, sweeping the sea of flames, transcending the 4 Nine Kings' tribulation. At this moment, Han Fei had already disappeared. Judging from the level of trouble he caused, the things on the Ice God Gorge couldn't have been done by a second person. The Life Queen looked at the cold man and smiled faintly. White Armor Emperor, it's not the first time that your White Shell Royal City has bullied my Waterwood Heaven. What? I just arranged a little trick, and you can't stand it? The cold man snorted lightly. He's just a Venerable. I'd like to see how much trouble he can make. Mu Wuhua, if you want to stop this war, you must open the Thousand Mountains ancient realm, and... The Life Queen smiled but didn't say anything. If you knew that this was just a junior explorer, what would you think? The Life Queen wasn't worried at all. Since Han Fei was the chosen one, the only one who could come to the Waterwood Heaven, and he was so good at making trouble, he couldn't have done all this without some means and great luck. Suddenly, the Life Queen could barely see that space through the aura of Jing's venerable token. But why did she see 2 half-mermaids? Suddenly, the Life Queen's heart did a flip. Was Han Fei related to the Sea Clan? But on second thought, no, she knew Han Fei's identity. Since he wasn't related to the Sea Clan, did Han Fei have a way to transform into a sea demon? Interesting, Han Fei didn't know that he had been seen through. Taking advantage of the big explosion, he and Yu Jing crossed the void. While flying, Han Fei said via voice transmission, if you meet any strong masters on the way, tell them I'm here to report the battle situation. Yu Jing said, my lord, as far as I know, there are more than 5 peak stage Dao-seeking masters in the Ice God Gorge at this moment. Can we really steal them? Han Fei sneered. Didn't they just explode? Could it be that the experts from the Ice God Gorge will remain indifferent? Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something and stopped. The void lines directly buckled the Yujing. Let me use your body first. As he spoke, a series of arrays appeared under Han Fei's feet. The breath-concealing array and the stealth array were activated together. Only Yujing was still trying to sprint forward. Hum. In the void, 3 silhouettes flew over one after another. In his heart, the old turtle said, 1 peak stage Dao-seeking, 2 advanced. Han Fei made up his mind. So, be fast. After robbing the Ice God Gorge, we have to run. Old turtle, keep attacking. Stop, Yujing, didn't you go to the ice wall? Why are you here? Ice Mountain City, what happened just now? The 3 Dao-seeking realm demons were already standing in front of Yujing. At this moment, one of the advanced Dao-seeking realm demons pressed Yujing with one hand. If Yujing made any strange movements, he would immediately attack and tear him to pieces. However, Yujing was desperate at this moment. Because except for his soul and consciousness, he couldn't control his body at all. Who? What answered the 3 was a terrifying beast roar. Second. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 12:10. Han Fei was extremely glad that he had been to the 100,000 mountains and inherited a variety of combat methods, which also made him more careful about the combat methods of various clans. He could sneak attack others when they were unprepared, but those creatures he didn't know would naturally have different means of attack. Similarly, he could also take them by surprise. Just like at this moment, Han Fei seemed to be controlling Yujing's body, but in fact, he was just using Yujing as a carrier of his void lines. Yujing was taken down in the blink of an eye. With a roar, Han Fei and the old turtle took action one after another. The void lines were launched, and black mist shrouded them. A shocking sword light slashed across the sky, and 2 advanced Dao-seeking state creatures were directly cut down. In terms of absolute strength, the advanced explorer was no match for Han Fei at all. The sea demon at the peak level Dao-seeking state withered. However, at the moment when he was shrouded in black mist, an ultra-quality divine weapon exploded. In an instant, Han Fei was blasted hundreds of kilometers away. He felt his internal organs tumbling, and there were many wounds on his body, with golden blood dripping down. The great sea demon at the peak level Dao-seeking state was even more miserable. The explosion was closest to him, and he was blown up into a mutilated person on the spot. Han Fei saw that the great sea demon at the peak level Dao-seeking state had turned into a big octopus. However, at this moment, 4 tentacles were blown up, and only 5 were left. At this moment, the latter had just torn the space and ran to the outside world. And Han Fei's heart did a flip. Hey, where's Yujing? Where's Yujing? The old turtle was speechless. That little jellyfish was weak in the first place. When the ultra-quality divine weapon exploded, he was just at the peak level Dao-seeking state. Of course, he was crushed to pieces. Han Fei said in surprise, really? He's at the Dao-seeking state after all. Han Fei was speechless. I just found a fucking spy to confuse the Dao-seeking state big sea demon who came to chase me. Unexpectedly, the spy was killed. Han Fei roared, asshole, I'm going to kill that octopus. Han Fei didn't tear the space but directly chased in the void. He could see the outside world in this void, only to find that the big sea demon was holding a big conch and howling. Han Fei's face changed greatly. Not good. Kill him now. Han Fei didn't even have time to cast the divine healing technique on himself before he chased after them. At this moment, he couldn't care less about hiding anymore. He launched Snowmorn in midair. At the moment when the space was torn apart, the saber currents that filled the sky converged. The giant octopus's reaction wasn't slow either. On the octopus's head, a large eye opened up. Slurp. Terrifying laser-like rays shot directly at Han Fei. Han Fei frowned. His skin was scalded. What kind of attack was this? Even his current physique was easily scalded. The octopus was stunned too. What kind of physique was that? My purple lightning divine light couldn't even pierce through a person. Puchi. Han Fei glared and roared, Hu. He activated 100 Beast Soul suppressing roar and snowmorn. With one blow, Han Fei pierced through this peak-level Dao-seeking big demon. This was a terrifying battle record. Buzz. At that moment, the black fog enshrouded the Dao-seeking big demon again. Han Fei lowered his head and looked at his chest. It was slightly to the right of the center, which was almost pierced through by the purple light. What a terrifying power. The old turtle's voice echoed in his heart, not good. Let's go. Han Fei suddenly shivered after tearing open the void for less than 2 seconds. Then, he heard the old turtle's reminder. He didn't dare to hesitate at all. With a swish, he tore open a spatial rift again and crawled in. Hum. Hum. Hum, the arrays under Han Fei's feet were all concealment arrays and dense fog arrays. Humph. A giant hand clenched its fist, shattering over 10 formations into pieces. A silver-blue seahorse appeared in the void and transformed into a human in the blink of an eye. Huh. The seahorse crushed the spell formation, only to find that among the pile of spell formations, there was a short-distance teleportation portal that was currently in the process of being destroyed. The seahorse scanned the surroundings with a thought, but he frowned even more. Why is there no one? He directly scanned the surrounding 50,000 kilometers, but the seahorse didn't find anyone. Then he said to a big conch, I found the target, but he ran away. Not a venerable, but a peak-level explorer. This person's concealment method is quite exquisite and can avoid my perception. I'll personally guard the Ice God Gorge and wait for him to appear next time. Han Fei didn't know who the seahorse was talking to, but he couldn't hear it at this moment. He had already entered Forge the Universe. Half an hour later, in the undulating sea, a small jellyfish suddenly stretched its body and quietly swam to the outer sea of the realm of ice. Yu Jing panicked. Han Fei, including the Venerable, didn't know that Yu Jing's original body was a very special kind of jellyfish, called the Doom Jellyfish. The reason why Yu Jing refused to go to the front line was that, like his name, he basically couldn't come back. He could really trigger bad luck. He was still 200,000 kilometers away from the ice and snow city wall when he met Han Fei. Finally, he formed an alliance with Han Fei. This ruffian was very good at making trouble and was targeted by the Venerable again. Okay. Now, no one knew whether Han Fei had been killed or not. But it didn't care about this matter anymore. It would be best if he was killed. He had robbed a batch of resources and didn't give them to Han Fei. Yu Jing fled unhurriedly. As a characteristic of the doomed jellyfish, his recovery ability was beyond imagination. Although misfortune was misfortune, he wouldn't die if it wasn't one of the 10 extreme death zones. As long as he didn't die, he could cultivate again in less than 10 years. Besides, he still had resources on him, which could greatly shorten the time of recultivation. Ha! I'm not going to the front line anymore. I'm going to the Han Wang city. Han Fei's strategic route of rapid attack and plunder ended in failure. At this moment, Han Fei cursed, Yu Jing, that bastard, didn't you say that there was no Venerable in the Ice God Gorge? Sure enough, those who are not my kind must have different intentions. I'm still too naive. I need to learn from this. The old turtle listened to Han Fei talking to himself and simply stopped talking. You're naive. You're not naive at all. Isn't that Yu Jing guy good? If they were used as cannon fodder by you, they would be blown into smithereens. Han Fei regretfully took out a few Sun Moon shells, which he had taken from the peak-level Dao-seeking great demon just now. Plus, he had taken one before. Fuck. The old turtle asked, what's wrong? Han Fei's pupils dilated. I forgot, I still have a batch of resources with Yu Jing. Son of a bitch, I screwed up. The old turtle roared angrily, come on, tell me, what did I do to you? Do you know how many people in the tens of thousands of races want to be my son? Han Fei was speechless. Why are you angry? The old turtle snorted heavily. Actually, you're not bad. If you can recognize me as your adoptive father. Before the old turtle finished speaking, Han Fei sneered. Just for this sentence, you owe me a peak-level Tao-seeking great demon. Remember, you owe me. Who are you? Do you want to take advantage of me? How can I, this young master, allow others to tarnish my majesty? The old turtle, the two chatted for a while. Han Fei looked at his more than 2 million caddies of spiritual spring and thought to himself, I can't go outside for the time being. I have to take care of this ice god gorge. But what if I take care of it? After the war with the Shuemu heaven is over, I have no chance to sneak into the ice god gorge. Besides, I've fallen into a desperate situation. Han Fei murmured, if I were their venerable, I would definitely keep an eye on this space. The old turtle said, who told you to draw a short-distance teleportation array? If it were a long-distance teleportation array, no one would keep an eye on this place. Han Fei said with a black face, in such a short time, I have to have time to carve the array. Humph, no, the sea is dangerous. I have to draw hundreds of fish skin maps in advance first. The old turtle, a day later, there was already a large pile of fish skin maps in front of Han Fei. He wondered if he should go out for a while first. Suddenly, the old turtle said, do you think the venerable is so impatient? Han Fei gritted his teeth. If the venerable watched him for 8 or 10 years, how could he escape? At this moment, Han Fei really wanted to hide his true realm and return to the sea spirit realm. Huh? Wait. Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. How long had it been since he paid attention to the progress of his cultivation? Han Fei suddenly straightened his body. By the way, he had learned too many combat techniques. Today, many of them had been eliminated by his subconscious. But he had the demon purification pot. Why should I be eliminated? At that moment, Han Fei's heart was rekindled. He found that he seemed to have a lot of room for growth. Third. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 12:11. From the Blue Sea Town to the Scattered Stars Island, Han Fei felt that he had been rapidly absorbing all kinds of skills. For example, refining techniques, arrays, and all kinds of combat skills. Then, he traveled to the outer sea and the ancient battlefield. When he arrived at the Thousand-Star City, it was even more dangerous. After the trip to the Ideal Palace, Han Fei had lived an extra life for no reason. He had also learned a lot of combat skills and had been growing. During the 4 years in the Wind and Rain Village, he finally had the time to polish himself. But at that time, Han Fei was thinking about how to integrate his old self and his original self more thoroughly and dig out his strength, so he didn't pay attention to combat skills. At this moment, when Han Fei went to the outer sea alone again, he suddenly had the same feeling as when he was in the level 3 fishery. At that time, Han Fei thought everything he saw was good. Perhaps, the Shuemu heaven was really novel enough to arouse Han Fei's interest. At this time, Han Fei sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, and scanned through the combat skills in his mind. The War Soul archery technique seemed to be abandoned for the time being. The War Soul archery technique in the Shuemu heaven was obviously more advanced than the War Soul archery technique. If he wanted to learn it, he would learn the War Soul archery technique of the Flying Feather clan first. The Million Knife art or the Million Knives in One was no longer enough for him. The next step of the Million Knives in One was deduced called the Million Thought Knife Light. If he guessed correctly, it should be a heaven level, divine quality 1. But he didn't lack offensive combat skills now, so he could save some resources for the time being. When Han Fei saw the Thousand Faces technique, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. This was the technique that gave him an epiphany just now. If he continued to deduce the Thousand Faces technique, would he hide his strength? There was also the Great Soul Sending technique. Han Fei hadn't used this evil technique even once. However, at that time, he thought it was an evil technique with too many disadvantages. But now, as long as he could deduce it, the evil technique might be able to become a divine technique. Who said that good and evil were completely separated? Han Fei continued to scan. The art of invincibility and the sacrificing punch were both combat skills that could not be deduced. Moreover, they were already very strong, so there was no need for further deductions. Although he could derive the 108 desolate god body and the 64-dimensional fish dragon dance, he had just achieved a breakthrough in the indestructible body, and the effect of the heavenly illusionary divine walking art would only be better than the fish dragon dance, so he could give it up for now. Han Fei quickly recalled. Divine healing technique, I forgot about that. Nowadays, there are terrifying explosions at every turn, so it's necessary to continue to deduce it. What if he gets injured? The soul-splitting technique is similar to the Great Soul Embedding technique, but it's much more advanced. Heaven Extended technique, that's a transformation technique. I can try this technique a step further. Demon God Canon. This cultivation technique of the sea race is peerless and close to the Tao. I can try to cultivate while I'm a sea demon. Han Fei continued to read, only to find that the 100 Wars divine hammer consumed too much spiritual energy. Any one of them required 500 million points of spiritual energy to deduce. Deducing the Beast King technique, Heavenly Ethereal Divine Walking technique, and Shifting Stars required 1 billion. This terrifying number made Han Fei feel sorry for the 5 million spiritual springs he had used before. Of course, he didn't panic at all. In any case, he would still be able to snatch it. Therefore, after thinking for a while, Han Fei decided on the few techniques that he would continue to deduce, which were, the Thousand Faces technique, which should be able to help him hide better when he deduced it here. Maybe he should deduce either the Great Soul Embedding technique or the Soul Splitting technique. He had to deduce the Heaven Extended technique first. This was related to whether he could transform into more creatures. In short, he could basically transform into anything that ran on the land or flew in the sky through the Beast King technique. As for swimming in the water, he was still a bit lacking. The divine healing technique, a miraculous technique of self-recovery, could bring him to a higher level as a spirit gatherer. After choosing these 4 techniques, Han Fei immediately took a breath, looked at the Thousand Faces technique, and shouted in a low voice, deduce. 1 million points of spiritual energy were consumed. 1000 transformation technique, heaven level, low quality, too weak. Deduce again. 10 million points of spiritual energy were consumed. Heaven transference technique, heaven level, high quality, still can't hide my strength. Deduce again. 30 million points of spiritual energy were consumed. Hiding mystery technique, heaven level, divine quality, a technique that can change one's realm, but can't hide the potential of one's spiritual heritage. Seeing that the cost of this technique had reached 100 million points, Han Fei smiled bitterly. Sure enough, any technique, as long as it was deduced to the extreme, would consume an astronomical amount of spiritual energy. This time, Han Fei's eyes lit up. Got it. Art of Deception, Venerable Level, Low Quality, Introduction. The Myriad Tao Concealment Mystic Technique is a combination of the characteristics of tens of thousands of hallucinatory creatures in the ocean. Through a unique method of channeling spiritual energy, a deception pearl can be produced. It can be used to change one's strength, realm, smell, appearance, and body shape without limit. Disadvantage 1, easy to lose yourself. Disadvantage 2, can't compare to the realm above your own. Deduced art, unknown deduction cost, 0/500 million note, sometimes the art of deception can even deceive yourself. You must stay true to yourself. Han Fei took a breath. This technique is so powerful that it can even deceive me. No wonder it can deceive others. Besides, this art of deception can store the power of different identities, strengths, and auras through the cultivation pearl. This is simply a divine disguise technique. Well, although the name is a bit too ordinary, it's better than the hidden mystic technique, isn't it? Gudu. When Han Fei was deducing, the old turtle didn't dare to say a word, because he found that his head was spinning as if it was unconsciously running with Han Fei's divine sense. Also, the old turtle saw that the spiritual energy in Han Fei's forged the universe was consumed rapidly. After a while, the 150 million points of spiritual energy were almost gone. Where did it go? Needless to say, the demon purification pot must have taken it. This made the old turtle wonder. Han Fei could indeed control the demon purification pot to do something. But what exactly could it do? He didn't know. Han Fei slightly suppressed his excitement. This time, he was going to deduce 4 techniques. Conservatively speaking, more than half of the spiritual spring would be consumed. Of course, he couldn't neglect it. Han Fei's eyes immediately turned to the soul-splitting technique. He chose to temporarily give up the Great Soul Hosting technique. The original intention of the Great Soul Hosting technique was purely for possession. It was a technique of possession. This kind of technique was more like self-preservation. It would be more effective when he was in a life-and-death situation and trying to make a comeback. However, possession also meant losing his own cultivation, didn't it? And the subsequent deduction of the soul-splitting technique was the soul-splitting path. The word path attracted Han Fei's attention. Deduce. 100 million points of spiritual energy evaporated without a trace, and the old turtle's pupils constricted again. Although 100 million points of spiritual energy was actually not much in his eyes. But to devour this amount of spiritual energy in an instant, one must at least be above the king level. But if one really reached the king level, who would devour ordinary spiritual energy? In Han Fei's eyes, information emerged. Soul-splitting path, venerable level, high quality, introduction, the soul-splitting technique. This technique can tear apart the soul and attach it to another body. It can be used to control living beings that have no consciousness, and it can also be used to kill the souls of low-level living beings. When the body is destroyed, it can forcibly deprive a large number of souls, absorb the power of the souls, and maintain the soul for possession. This is the immortal soul-splitting path. Anyone who takes this path has a chance to become a king. Deduce, unable to deduce. Note, this technique has returned to the path of cultivation. It can be practiced, but it cannot be deduced. Hiss. Han Fei was dumbfounded. What's going on? Has this technique already entered the path of cultivation? The soul-splitting technique was originally a heaven-level, divine quality technique, but after only one deduction, it reached the soul-splitting path, which was an immortal soul-splitting path. Han Fei didn't believe it. I only spent 100 million points of spiritual energy, and I've entered the path of cultivation. Immortal soul-splitting path. Why does it feel like a cheap commodity? Han Fei couldn't help but ask, Old Turtle, to what level can I become immortal? Seeing that the demon purification pot had just stopped spinning, the old turtle didn't dare to argue with Han Fei, so he immediately replied, Immortality. If you're talking about immortality in the general sense, then it's the immortality state. However, you should be able to understand that in this world, there is no such thing as immortality, not even for gods. Han Fei nodded. Immediately, Han Fei sneered at the soul-splitting path. As the old saying went, cheap stuff didn't get good stuff. If the soul-splitting path was really so awesome, the snow god's temple wouldn't have been destroyed so easily with this technique. Although disappointed with the soul-splitting path, Han Fei wasn't panicked. Although it was cheap, he could still use it. He just didn't regard it as his own path. Then, Han Fei finally focused his eyes on the Heaven's Extended technique. The Heaven's Extended technique was already at the venerable level, but the cost of deduction was still 100 million points. Han Fei wasn't panicked at all. Deduce. When the 100 million points of spiritual energy disappeared again, the demon purification pot spun again, and the old turtle slightly shivered. He didn't know what Han Fei was doing exactly. Why did this calabash have to consume 100 million points of spiritual energy? Why did it have to consume another 100 million points of spiritual energy? Did it have to cost so much to raise a calabash? Han Fei didn't know what the old turtle was thinking. He stared for a moment, and the information in his eyes changed again. Evolution technique, venerable level, high quality, introduction, observe the wonders of the evolution of creatures. You can completely deduce the evolution and mutation methods of 3 kinds of creatures. You can simulate their aura and completely transform into such creatures without being detected. After the evolution, you will be no different from a sea demon heavenly talent. After the evolution, you can only undergo another evolution 1 day later. Mutated creatures, half mermaid, Atlantean, merman deduced art, unknown deduction cost, 0/500 million note, you can control or command some sea creatures with your aura. Huh? Atlantean? Han Fei was about to ask the old turtle, but he wondered if the old turtle would be able to tell what he was doing from his behavior if he asked. Forget it. I won't ask any more. Han Fei thought for a moment. He had never seen the so-called Atlantean, so he wouldn't transform in that direction. It was even more impossible for the Merman clan. They were too special and rare in the capital. They were definitely nobles among the sea clans. Han Fei wouldn't choose them either. So, in the end, he could only transform into a half-mermaid. But unlike before, there was no risk of being exposed. This meant that if he mutated again, he would become a real half-mermaid. The difference between the evolution technique and the deception technique was that one could really transform, while the other could really deceive. In the end, Han Fei quickly focused his eyes on the divine healing technique. Han Fei glanced at it. The deduction cost of the divine healing technique was only 10 million points. At that time, Han Fei smiled. Maybe the divine healing technique was so useful that he neglected its real level. Deduced. A moment later, information appeared in Han Fei's eyes. Healing radiance, heaven level, low quality, introduction, spiritual energy has a radiance, which is called the healing divine radiance. The divine radiance connects spiritual energy, nourishes billions of creatures, and gives all things the foundation of recovery. The healing radiance is purer and is separated from the method of stripping the healing radiance from spiritual energy. Deduced art, holy light technique spiritual energy consumption, 50 million points. Han Fei blinked. Fuck, I seem to have neglected an important thing. Top. Chapter 12:12. Healing was one of the basic skills of a spirit gatherer. However, both the healing and the divine healing technique always used healing radiance. This kind of power actually existed between heaven and earth, floating in the void. The difference between the healing and the divine healing technique was that the divine healing technique could obtain more healing radiance in a short period of time. It didn't mean that the divine healing technique had more extraordinary features than the healing technique. For example, this healing radiance was only heaven level, low quality, but Han Fei knew that it was probably much stronger than the divine healing technique. The only thing that puzzled Han Fei was why the power that a spirit gatherer could master was always of a low level. At least he had never heard of anyone who had a particularly powerful healing technique. Of course, he didn't remember that Diwu Haiguang had also used this technique on him. But this didn't prevent Han Fei from continuing to deduce. If this healing radiance was only heaven level, low quality, then there should be a more powerful healing technique, deduce. This time, the new information refreshed Han Fei. Holy light technique, heaven level, high quality, introduction, there is radiance between heaven and earth, which is called healing divine radiance. The divine radiance connects with the origin of the void, nourishes billions of creatures, and gives all things the foundation of recovery. The radiance is bundled and can become holy light. When the holy light descends, miracles are born. Deduced art, holy light chain spiritual energy consumption, 200 million points. When he saw this information, Han Fei frowned. The introduction of the holy light technique had changed a little, but it was not the key. It was only heaven level, high quality, and miracles were about to be born. It seemed that the path of a spirit gatherer wasn't simple. Seeing that the deduction cost had become 200 million points, Han Fei immediately looked at his spiritual spring that still had more than 1 billion points. He didn't panic at all and continued to deduce. After a while, the information appeared again. Holy light chain, heaven level, divine quality, introduction. There is radiance between heaven and earth, which is called healing divine radiance. The divine radiance connects with the origin of the void, nourishes billions of creatures, and gives all things the foundation of recovery. The radiance is bundled and shines on all creatures, forming healing chains that heal all wounded creatures within the illuminated range. Healing range. The healing range varies according to the strength, pattern, and realm. Deduced art, apocalyptic divine technique spiritual energy consumption, 1 billion points note, the current range is 1,000 meters. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. This was something he had never heard of before. Those who didn't know better might think that aliens were attacking Earth. In the holy light, someone exclaimed, "My wounds are all healed." Someone roared, "I feel energetic. I can fight again." A spirit gatherer was shocked. "Who is it? Did Her Majesty take action in person?" A venerable was dumbfounded. "No, this is not the power of a king at all. It's more like the manifestation of a great Tao. That's why it has such a terrifying healing ability." And soon, both the Shuemu heaven and the sea demons discovered that those who could be baptized by the white light on the entire battlefield were all seriously injured humans. Even a fool knew that this matter was definitely related to the human experts. A bug roared, "Has a great master of the human race appeared?" The Sky Clan hovered and looked around, trying to find the person who attacked. The 9 venerables of the human race. Oh, no, Yu Chen, who had just made a breakthrough in the bloody battle, were all shocked. Wusheng Shui murmured, "Is the human king back?" The Life Queen and the king of the Sea Clan were all shocked. They looked up at the sky solemnly. The Cold King said, "It's impossible for a new king to be born in this desolate land. I'm curious, what on earth has the Shuemu heaven been planning recently?" The Life Queen ignored him and slightly turned her head, but she was slightly unhappy in her heart. Is this the Apocalypse divine technique? The unparalleled great Tao of a spirit gatherer has been revealed at this moment. At this moment, Han Fei, who was hiding in Forge the Universe, didn't feel anything. He was staring at the Apocalypse divine technique in a daze. Apocalypse divine technique, unrated, introduction. The Apocalypse divine technique is also known as the Immortal divine technique. This technique connects with the origin of the void and summons infinite healing light at the cost of one's life. Under the illumination of Apocalypse, evil spirits are purified and wounds are healed. Effect 1, Healing Light. According to the condition of the wounded body, a lot of spiritual energy will be consumed to quickly heal the wounded body. Effect 2, Life Overdraft. The caster can use the Apocalypse divine power at the cost of his life in exchange for the recovery of the wounded body. Effect 3, the Apocalypse Great Tao. Those who practice this Great Tao will master the Apocalypse Great Tao and their lifespan will be doubled. The effect of life overdraft will gradually decrease as one's strength grows. Deduction, cannot be deduced, can only be comprehended. Spiritual energy consumption, unknown note, the Apocalypse divine technique is just the beginning. The Apocalypse Great Tao is the return of a spirit gatherer. Gudu. When he saw this information, Han Fei was dumbfounded. Did I deduce another Great Tao? The soul-splitting path just now only required 100 million points of spiritual energy to deduce, but this Apocalypse divine technique was 10 times more expensive. That's more like a Great Tao. Besides, the Apocalypse divine technique also said that this was just the beginning of the Apocalypse Great Tao, which meant that he had spent 1 billion points of spiritual energy and finally found the beginning of a Great Tao. Han Fei's heart sank. He discovered a phenomenon. It seemed that once a combat skill reached the venerable level, if he continued to deduce it, it would no longer be a combat skill itself, but a great path. Didn't it mean that combat skills almost came to an end when they reached the venerable level? Because after that, it was the Great Tao. If you didn't enter the Tao, how could you learn this strongest secret technique? It was exactly because of this that Han Fei was quite hesitant. Did he really have to choose one of these Great Tao? Although the main purpose of an explorer was to explore the Great Tao and the direction of his own Great Tao. If he could deduce Great Tao one by one. In the end, there were so many Great Tao in front of him, but he could only choose one. How fucking uncomfortable is this? Han Fei finally couldn't help but ask, Old Turtle, can each person only take one Great Tao? The Old Turtle. The Old Turtle had been waiting for Han Fei to speak. However, he didn't expect that Han Fei would ask this question. The question was, why did Han Fei ask this question? The Old Turtle couldn't help but say, it's already very rare for ordinary people to get one Great Tao. Han Fei keenly grasped a word. Ordinary people. Han Fei asked, what about abnormal people? For example, those peerless heavenly talents, geniuses. There was doubt in the Old Turtle's eyes, but he still explained, when I say ordinary people, it's just an ordinary situation. A person usually chooses a Great Tao in the end. Because the further you go, you will find that the Great Tao is too difficult to walk. You can't even clearly tell how many Great Tao you have walked. Because of this, some people began to think that since one Great Tao can't be taken, then take another one. It's just that. Han Fei hurriedly asked, but what? The Old Turtle sneered. No matter how you go, you have to take a Great Tao. This is the path that you must choose in the end. You can give up everything else, but you can't let go of this Great Tao. Even if you want to take more than one Great Tao at the same time, you need to determine one Great Tao. Otherwise, if your understanding of the Great Tao is not strong enough and your Tao is not deep enough, you won't be able to take any other Great Tao. Han Fei was silent for a long time. I see. So, how many Great Tao can a person take? The Old Turtle was so angry that he laughed. As many as you want to take. However, the more Great Tao you take, the more unclear your Great Tao will be. At that time, you won't know how to take that Great Tao. In the end, if you make a difficult choice, your Tao heart will be unstable, and all the Great Tao will collapse. You will be stuck in the semi-venerable realm or the semi-king realm for the rest of your life. Apex. Chapter 12-13. Hearing the Old Turtle's explanation, Han Fei immediately understood. So, in fact, in the final analysis, it was not certain which path to take. Even ordinary explorers could take many paths. At this stage, being able to create a grand Tao of quintessence was the crux of the problem. Han Fei curled his lips casually. Since there are thousands of Great Taos, why are there still so many people who can't become venerables? Thousands of Great Taos. The Old Turtle chuckled. If you want everyone to find their own Great Tao, then there are indeed thousands of Great Taos. Huh? What do you mean? The Old Turtle said disdainfully, actually, it is not difficult to enter the Tao. As long as you are an explorer, you can understand a path. Of course, just this step alone was something that very few people could accomplish. What is really difficult is not to enter the Tao, but the quality of the Tao itself. Why do so many venerables stop at the half-king realm? Because their path is only enough for them to reach the half-king realm. Which Great Tao can be casually entered by anyone who can become a monarch? Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Is it not difficult to enter the Tao? Han Fei already understood. The Old Turtle had been an emperor for so long that he had probably forgotten that for ordinary people, it was already extremely difficult to enter the Tao. Besides, it was not easy to go to the extreme of a Great Tao. What made Han Fei guess was that the Old Turtle said that many people walked their own Great Tao. The implication was that in addition to their own Great Tao, there were other Great Tao that everyone could walk. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, so, there are some Great Tao in this world that most people can walk together? The Old Turtle nodded. Of course, the 5 major professions of the human race, the insect clan's explosive force technique, the sky clan's speed technique, and the demonic plant clan's accumulation technique. These are the most basic Great Tao. They can be walked together, but they can't coexist. Han Fei was stunned for a moment. What do you mean? What do you mean by they can be walked together, but they can't coexist? The Old Turtle sneered. Think about it. If there is someone who walks exactly the same great Tao as you, what will you do? Han Fei was stunned for a moment. What can I do? The old turtle chuckled. Of course you will swallow him. Our great Tao is the same. As long as you take his great Tao, won't your great Tao of origin be several times more powerful than before? Hiss, you can do that. Han Fei's eyes widened. This is too fucking outrageous. So, he could snatch someone else's Tao. If he could keep robbing and robbing, wouldn't he not need to cultivate? The old turtle said, of course, many of the great Tao of origins that we snatched are comprehended by ourselves. There won't be a situation where our strength will multiply. However, on the same great Tao, the stronger one was, the harder it would be for them to coexist. Therefore, even if the great Taos were the same, those who ultimately walked this path were all mortal enemies. Therefore, although some Taos are common, there are very, very few who can walk at the peak. Han Fei's pupils constricted slightly. Then according to what you said, the 5 major professions of mankind will all be enemies in the end, won't they? The old turtle said leisurely, have you ever wondered how the 5 major professions came to be? Could it be a trap set up by a top expert of this path? They specialize in hunting those who have matured. Kings of the 5 professions. Hiss. Han Fei was dumbfounded. He was so shocked that he was burnt to a crisp. Yeah. The 5 major professions give people a direction. However, who knows if this is a road of no return? Since the experts who walk on the same great Tao and spread the 5 major professions, why do they have to set up so many competitors for themselves? Han Fei couldn't help but shiver. The great Tao was too fucking deep. He couldn't think about it at all. The old turtle said again, especially for people like you. On your invincible path, there must be heavenly talents of other races who walk the invincible path. If you really walk on this path, when you are strong enough, you will find that everyone you meet at that time can be called invincible. Isn't it scary? Han Fei's eyelids twitched. So, the reason why the invincible path is so dangerous is because of this great Tao? The old turtle chuckled. You also know that the invincible path is dangerous? Many people just know it, but they don't know why. However, it doesn't hurt to tell you this. The great Tao of origins will attract each other. Even many kings don't understand this truth. Han Fei. The old turtle said, no matter what great Tao it is, it will follow a strange rule. They will always attract each other, meet each other, and fight each other in a certain way at a certain moment. Not only do origins attract each other, but also things that promote the growth of origins will also attract you. You will understand this rule after you become a venerable. However, mortals call this rule luck. Gulp. Han Fei swallowed. So, it may be difficult to even enter the great Tao if you walk on your own. But if you walk on an existing great Tao, you may also become a leek for others. What is a leek? Han Fei took a breath. A plant that can be harvested once it grows. The old turtle said leisurely, most people are not even qualified to be leeks. Han Fei's heart sank. In any case, according to the old turtle, then whether it is the invincible path or the heavenly enlightenment path, it is extremely difficult to walk. For the former, after you enter the great Tao, you may encounter a super strong master who also walks on the invincible path. For the latter, you may directly become a leek. Han Fei immediately took a breath. No. In 3 years, I will return to the yin-yang heaven and find a way to inform Luo Xiaobai and the others. I don't want to be harvested by others when I cultivate to the extreme. That would be a great loss. The old turtle said, actually, you don't have to be so nervous. Even if they were to be harvested, they had to have the capital to be harvested. You are only a junior explorer now. What you should think about is how to reach the peak as soon as possible. When you reach the peak, you can take your time to think about what great Tao to take. Han Fei let out a sigh of relief. The old turtle's words were reasonable. He was indeed thinking too much now. As for what path to choose, that was something he should think about when he reached the peak of the Explorer realm. When he reached the peak of the Explorer realm, he could at least guarantee that he would be able to dominate the Yin-Yang heaven and the Waterwood heaven, right? At that time, even if he couldn't defeat a Venerable, he would still have the strength of a junior Venerable, so he wouldn't be able to run away. Thinking of this, Han Fei immediately said, "That makes sense." Han Fei took a deep breath. He did not immediately practice the new technique that he had just deduced. Instead, he made up his mind. Swish, Little Gold, Nine Tails, Little Fatty, and Licking Dog all came out. Meow, meow. Licking Dog turned into an electric arc and was about to pounce on Han Fei. Han Fei raised his foot and kicked. "From now on, every time you meow, I will kick you. I will kick you until you doubt your dog life." ZZ. Nine Tails quickly crawled to Han Fei's side, rubbing against Han Fei while fiddling with Licking Dog, who had been kicked away with his 9 tails. Licking Dog had never seen such a scene before. Although it was an ancient mutant, it was also a legendary big shot. In front of him, 3 of them suddenly appeared. Besides, judging from their auras, they were about to become law enforcers. Little Gold tilted his head and looked at Licking Dog as if wondering why there were such strange creatures in this world. Little Fatty's round eyes rolled, looked at Licking Dog for a while, and then lost interest. Instead, he looked at Han Fei. Breakthrough. With a thought, 4 big pits appeared in Forge the Universe. In each pit, there were about 50,000 caddies of spirit awakening fluid, which was completely incomparable to the nearly 1,000,000 caddies he had before. These were all freshly looted, and most of them were not looted from Dao-seeking state monsters. Because spirit awakening fluid was not very useful to them. These spirit awakening fluid were basically looted from the Free Trade Valley. Han Fei hesitated and said, "You guys have reached the peak of your strength for a long time. Although there is not much spirit awakening fluid, it should be enough for you to make a breakthrough." Unlike him, when his strength soared all the way, he was still in the reincarnation and couldn't think of them at all. Later, they left the ideal palace and went to the Wind and Rain village, where ordinary fisheries couldn't help them make a breakthrough and were more likely to be discovered. Therefore, Han Fei simply didn't let them live. However, from now on, Han Fei needed to find a way to push the 9 tails and the others to a new level. In 3 years, he thought, I should at least upgrade the 9 tails and the others to level 60. Even then, Han Fei felt it was a bit low. After all, he was already an explorer. Master, who are these?" Simp Licking jumped over with a swish and looked up at Han Fei, his eyes full of curiosity. Han Fei said lightly, "The 9 tails is your eldest brother, Little Gold is your second brother, and Little Fatty is your third brother." Then, Han Fei introduced, "This is Old 4, his name is Simp Licking Dog." "Woof. Master, it's Tengu." Han Fei nodded. "Yes, Simp Licking Dog." Simp Licking Dog, Han Fei kicked him. "All of you, go swallow the spirit awakening fluid. If anyone can't make a breakthrough after swallowing it, I will throw you into the sea demon nest." Swish. Except for Little Fatty, the 9 tails and the others, with a swish, jumped into the spirit awakening fluid. Han Fei thought, next time, I have to let Little Black and Little White make a breakthrough. After all, Little Black and Little White were his spiritual beasts. Why were they always stuck at level 59? At this moment, the old turtle asked in confusion, "Is that 9 death soul splitting octopus?" Vertex. Chapter 12-14. Han Fei was deeply surprised that the old turtle knew Little Fatty. He asked excitedly, "Do you know it?" The old turtle was silent for a long time. Why did the 9 death soul splitting octopus recognize you as its master? Han Fei thought, how can I tell you that? However, the old turtle said leisurely, I'm afraid it has something to do with this calabash. Han Fei said gloomily, just say it. What's wrong with the 9 death soul splitting octopus? The old turtle pondered and said, nothing, just an accident. Because I once met one. Although it only had the strength of a king, it could shake the emperor. Later, after the 9-death soul-splitting octopus was resurrected for the last time, it seemed to be eaten by the sea-swallowing demon whale. Han Fei took a breath. A king? Was it eaten? The old turtle snorted. Can't a king be eaten? Let me remind you, the so-called contractual spiritual beast is just an independent Great Tao contract. If you really want them to enter the Great Tao, you have to let them cultivate instead of piling up resources. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. What if they die outside? The old turtle's voice buzzed. They haven't experienced bloody battles. Even if you raise them to enter the Great Tao, what can you do? Then where did their ancestors come from? Were they raised by someone else? Han Fei nodded. That seemed to make sense. Half a day later. To Han Fei's great disappointment, something happened. Except for the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, Little Gold and Little Fatty seemed to be a little bit short of a breakthrough. As for Simp Dog, he was the weakest one, but he was very good at drinking. He drank all the spirit awakening fluid, raising his level from 41 to 45. The speed of his advancement caused the old turtle to sneer and say that his method was incorrect. Han Fei didn't care whether it was right or not. The old turtle did have a point. Contractual spiritual beasts also had to grow. How strong could they be if they kept them? As for worrying about the death of the contractual spiritual beasts, didn't he also go through a lot of trouble? If they could not be raised as independent individuals, who cared if they were legendary or ancient mutants? Could they compare to real legendary creatures? It could be said that so far, when Han Fei used the 9-tailed mantis shrimp or Little Gold, he only used them to make powerful moves. Once the ultimate move was over, their mission was basically completed. At this moment, information emerged in Han Fei's eyes. Name a 9-tailed mantis shrimp. Introduction: a mutated mantis shrimp with swift speed and extremely powerful attack power. It is adept at hiding itself and ambushing its prey. Its 9 tails transform into 9 divine chains, making it extremely powerful. Level of 50, quality, legendary. Contains spiritual energy greater than 18,852 points, food, omnivorous, prefers shrimps, battle skill, void chain, soul-piercing 9 tails. Remarks: current state, growth period. Han Fei's expression changed slightly. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp only had one more combat skill called 9-tailed soul piercing. Judging from the name, it should be a type of soul skill. However, the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was only level 50, which was equivalent to a sea demon. Even the fiercest one was only a peak-level sea demon. Little Gold even peeked at him from time to time. Little Fatty, who was not afraid of boiling water, collapsed to the ground. Only the 9-tailed mantis shrimp was very happy. It sent a message to the 9-tailed mantis shrimp: "Am I awesome now that I've made a breakthrough?" Bang! Han Fei kicked it away. None of them made a breakthrough, but you did. It shows that your potential is not as good as others. Why are you so cocky? The dog shivered and thought to himself, this master is a bit fierce. My big brother is a bit miserable. Swish! The dog had jumped to the 9-tailed mantis shrimp, licked him with his big tongue, and comforted him. Big brother, don't be afraid. I'm weaker than you. The 9-tailed mantis shrimp couldn't stand being licked. With a flip of her body, her delicate figure directly sent the simp flying. Han Fei was speechless. With a thought, he took them all back. At this moment, Han Fei only felt tired. It seemed that the more contractual spiritual beasts he had, the better. Yes, since he went out, he really had to let them go in the next 3 years. If he didn't let them go, the legendary creatures would be crippled by him. 3 days later. Huh. Han Fei struggled on the ground for a while. It didn't hurt, but his flesh and blood were a little tight, and his physique was changing. When Han Fei changed from a half-mermaid to a more handsome half-mermaid, he let out a sigh of relief and said, "Wow, it turns out that demonic energy can run so smoothly." The old turtle couldn't help but say, "Huh. Your transformation technique seems to have become more powerful." even I didn't see that you were a fake. Han Fei thought to himself, if you can see that, then there must be something wrong. I'm now an authentic sea demon, with pure bloodline and demonic energy. If I practice the demon god scripture, I'll definitely be a peerless heavenly talent among sea demons. So Han Fei unhurriedly began to practice the art of deception. After all, he had come from the waves and gone through the wind. He had seen and gotten to know all sorts of living beings. Even in this Forge the Universe, there were a pile of sea demon corpses, some of which were imitations. After more than an hour, Han Fei visualized thousands of creatures and finally chose a half-mermaid that no one knew. It looked like Yuhanjia, one of the 8 wings of blue demons of the Yinyang sky. He looked a little gloomy. Ha! Is this the breath-concealing technique? No, it's aura simulation. Oh, yes, it's the breath-concealing technique, but it's quite clever. Why haven't I seen you use it before? Han Fei curled his lips. Ha! Because I never thought of pretending to be a sea demon before. Now, I'm going to blend in. Han Fei didn't care whether the old turtle believed him or not. Anyway, the old turtle already knew enough of his secrets. But for now, he had to get out of here first. Han Fei grabbed the array diagram in his hand and said, Old turtle, after we go out, in case the Venerable is still there, you have to block the enemy's vision. But you have to block the enemy's vision. The old turtle frowned. I can cover it for at most 1 second. After all, I'm seriously injured now. Han Fei curled his lips. Hee hee, if I can't run away, you will die too. We are on the same boat. You should understand the saying that we are in the same boat. Sure that the old turtle must have a way to do it, Han Fei thought of something and appeared in the void. In this void, Han Fei tore the space without hesitation. After all, compared with the outside world, none of the creatures that could travel in the void were weak, so he had to be careful. Swish! At the moment when Han Fei tore the void, the old turtle suddenly said, 1 second. At the moment when Han Fei tore the void, the fish skin diagram in his hand unfolded, and a complicated long-distance teleportation array appeared. The moment he stepped out of the void, Han Fei seemed to hear a humph. However, no matter how fast the Venerable was, it still needed time to react. Han Fei had already stepped into the teleportation array. Hum. In the next moment, Han Fei shook his body and became half a head taller. His aura changed from a junior explorer to an advanced sea spirit. More than 8,000 kilometers away, Han Fei appeared in an ice canyon and wandered around as if nothing had happened. Han Fei asked, Old turtle, did you get rid of them? The old turtle said, Fortunately, you prepared the array diagram in advance. Otherwise, even if I cover you, I'm afraid you can't escape. There are venerables guarding you. It seems that you disappeared too mysteriously before and were noticed by him. If this time, he was just not sure if you were nearby. Then next time, he will definitely wait for you in the place where you disappeared. Han Fei's heart trembled. If this is the case, I can't expose myself again. Otherwise, how can I run if someone is waiting for me? Han Fei didn't dare to release his perception too much at this moment, but asked, Where are we now? The old turtle asked, Didn't you draw the teleportation array? Han Fei replied, It's random. Do you think I can teleport to a fixed location in this situation? The old turtle glanced around and said with some confusion, If there is no accident, this place should not be far from the place where you blew up last time, no more than 3,000 kilometers away. Oh. So close. The old turtle said, That city was blown up by you. It's being rebuilt now. As soon as the old turtle said this, a team of half-mermaids swam over 300 kilometers away from Han Fei. Before Han Fei left, someone said to him via voice transmission, Who's in front? Wait a moment. Hearing that, Han Fei paused and pretended to look around. When the other party was 200 kilometers away, he looked at the team. Ha! This person's perception is not weak. The female half-mermaid in the lead was surprised. Before she arrived, she had already spoken telepathically, "You don't look familiar." Han Fei suddenly had an idea. "I just came back from the Ice City Wall." Immediately, a half-mermaid shouted, "What? How dare you flee at the last minute?" Han Fei frowned. "It seems that the frontline battle is not over yet." Han Fei immediately said in a domineering tone, "Don't talk nonsense. You Hanja, am not the kind of person who would run away from a battle. I just sensed that I was about to make a breakthrough in the battle, so I made an exception and came back. But my home is gone." Hearing this, the leading half-mermaid immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "It turns out that you are about to make a breakthrough. Congratulations." Immediately, a half-mermaid cursed, "Not only your home is gone, but all our homes are gone. I don't know which bastard blew up the Ice Mountain City. Hundreds of millions of creatures were killed. The scene at that time was too horrible to look at. So far, no one knows what happened in the city that day." Someone added, "This matter is a mystery. Everyone who knows it is dead. Even the Venerable didn't find out the secret." The leading half-mermaid said, "Okay, let's cut the crap. By the way, you Hanja, when do you want to make a breakthrough?" Han Fei wondered, how did I kill hundreds of millions of creatures? These half-mermaids are really good at bragging. Thinking that he still had to run away, Han Fei immediately replied, "I feel that it will happen in a moment. Just now, I was looking for a place to make a breakthrough." The leading half-mermaid said, "Forget it. The situation is turbulent now. How about this, we will protect you. When you make a breakthrough and reach the peak level of the sea spirit realm, you can join our patrol team." Han Fei didn't know what to say. "I'm fucking running away. Don't you guys have any eyesight or knowledge?" At this moment, Han Fei really wanted to kill these idiots. But if he did it now, the consequences would be unpredictable. Who knew if there would be a Venerable watching? Helplessly, Han Fei could only agree, "Okay." Chapter 12:15. Han Fei deliberately waited for half an hour, and in front of more than a dozen half-mermaids, he made a breakthrough. Because it was all a disguise, there wasn't any earth-shattering scene. It looked like he was simply breaking through a realm. However, even so, when the cracking sound came out, several half-mermaids showed an envious look. "Yu Hanjia's breakthrough this time is not small. He should be regarded as a heavenly talent." Someone nodded in agreement. If he wasn't a heavenly talent, he wouldn't have come back from the front line to seek a breakthrough. Han Fei slowly opened his eyes, pretending to feel his strength a little bit. He was pleasantly surprised, but then he suppressed it. The female half-mermaid said, "How is it? A peak-level sea spirit is more than 30% stronger, isn't it?" Han Fei nodded slightly. "I feel more than 40% stronger than before." The eyes of the leading female half-mermaid lit up. When an ordinary person broke through to the peak, it was already a huge leap for them to increase their strength by 30%. But this Yu Hanjia was actually more than 40% stronger. This strength couldn't be underestimated. If he completely consolidated his strength and made further progress, his strength could be improved by another 20% to 30%. At that time, he would be a real heavenly talent. Immediately, this person said, "My name is Yu Kailing, and I am also the captain of this temporary patrol team. Since you have just come back from the front line and your home is gone, why don't you join my patrol team? When we return to the Ice God Gorge, with your strength as a peak-level sea spirit, there will definitely be people who will offer you an olive branch." Han Fei frowned. "Huh? These people are from the Ice God Gorge?" Originally, Han Fei had given up the idea of robbing the Ice God Gorge. But at this moment, Yu Kailing said that she was going back to the Ice God Gorge. If this was the case, wouldn't it be very easy for him to sneak into the Ice God Gorge? It didn't matter whether he could rob them or not. If he couldn't, he could just find an excuse to come out to exchange for resources and slip away. He didn't have to worry about being discovered at all. Han Fei thought for a moment and smiled. "Okay. No one had any objection to Han Fei's joining, because Han Fei's strength had been recognized by them and he stood on the same level as them. Besides, the iceberg city was equivalent to a post-disaster reconstruction. After all, there were many casualties. At this time, as fellow clansman, he still had some basic sympathy. Han Fei followed the inspection team all the way to Ice Mountain City. Before they even reached Ice Mountain City, all they could see were floating ice and collapsed mountains. The Ice God Gorge had existed for countless years, and this was the first time that this group of mountains had been destroyed. In fact, normal people wouldn't do such a thing. The strong, if they couldn't afford to do anything, would fight the low-level sea monsters. Those who were not strong did not even have the qualifications to enter the Ice Mountain City. Han Fei heard someone cursing in his ear, "Damn Shui Mutian, they must be too arrogant recently. There are so many big and small things." Someone said in a low voice, "I heard that the Shuemu heaven has produced a peerless genius who has passed the 4-9 king tribulation, and a new venerable has appeared. Maybe they have really become arrogant." Yu Kailing said, "We don't need to talk about the front line. The Waterwood heaven had prodigies, but so did the royal city. They have to go to the outer seas to break through, but we don't. Therefore, Shui Mutian is merely deceiving himself." Exactly. Passing the 4-9 king tribulations doesn't mean that one can truly grow. Han Fei listened and thought to himself, "Who are you looking down on? If you have the ability, go ahead." Believe it or not, their brains would be split askew. Han Fei said lightly, "I know who you are talking about. Han Fei of the human clan is indeed a genius. When I came back from the Ice City Wall, I heard that Han Fei is invincible in the same realm. His reputation in the Shuemu heaven is not small." Yu Kailing immediately turned her head and looked at Han Fei. "Have you seen him?" Someone said, "It's not that incredible. Who is he? How dare he claim to be invincible in the same realm?" Han Fei sighed leisurely. "I haven't seen him, but my brother has." Someone swam up and asked curiously, "What did your brother say?" Han Fei sighed again. "My brother is at the peak level of the sea spirit realm. He said that he met Han Fei once and was killed by him." Yu Kailing, everyone, Yu Kailing took a deep look at Han Fei. "My condolences." Someone said, "It seems that we can only wait for the real heavenly talent of the royal city to kill him." Han Fei sneered in his heart. "I wonder how you will react if you know that I am Han Fei." In the Ice Mountain City, all kinds of caves on the hilltops had basically collapsed. Han Fei saw the huge pit that he had blasted out. And within 3,000 kilometers of the center of the explosion, all kinds of creatures were swimming quickly at this moment. Some were turning over the ice and digging up the remains of some sea demons. Someone drilled into the ground and dug holes crazily, as if searching for something. Someone next to him sighed. "I really want to know what kind of power it took to blast out such a big pit." The whole city was turned upside down. Someone said, "The whole city wasn't turned upside down, but the shock wave smashed half of the city, which is beyond doubt. I heard that the spiritual spring blew up." Yu Kailing said, "Okay, enough chit-chat. The impact was so great that many places have become ruins. Now there are ownerless things buried everywhere. It's a mess. Let's try to maintain order." Han Fei looked at the crabs that were digging holes, the serpents that were drilling in and out of the ice, and the half-mermaids that were breaking the ice with harpoons. Then he looked at the dozen or so people and finally looked at Yu Kailing in shock. "A dozen or so people. Maintain order." The other half-mermaids also looked at Yu Kailing, and someone muttered, "How can we maintain order? There's nothing we can do." Ha ha ha. A low-quality divine weapon. Suddenly, they saw that not far away, a big crab crawled out of a pit, waving a harpoon and roaring excitedly. Immediately, Han Fei felt that someone next to him was breathing fast, and he licked his lips. "Sister Kailing, shall we also look for it?" Yu Kailing immediately glared at the person who spoke, and then looked around. Seeing that Han Fei looked calm, she couldn't help but ask, "Yu Hanjia, what do you think?" Han Fei grinned. It's better to disperse than to stop them. If they want to rob us, let them. Anyway, these are ownerless things now. No matter who gets them, they will enhance the strength of the Sea clan. Otherwise, if some strong masters really want these resources, they wouldn't have sent you here to patrol. Who would dare to embezzle it if a Dao-seeking powerhouse came to oversee it? Immediately, someone echoed, "That's right. Sister Kaling." When the Ice Mountain City exploded, it seemed that many strong masters came, but no one said that they were going to collect these resources. Yu Kaling hesitated, but Han Fei's explanation seemed to make sense. Besides, when they came, no one told them why they were here. The patrol didn't know anything except that they were here to patrol. Han Fei said solemnly, "If my guess is correct, you are actually the pillars of the Sea clan. The Ice Mountain City is in chaos, and countless people are searching for resources. Why did the higher-up send you here? I'm afraid it's not as simple as maintaining order, but to give you a chance, which shows that the higher-ups value you." Swish. 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 Everyone immediately looked at Han Fei gratefully. That was too fucking good. They were just worrying about how to find an excuse. Oh, was there a better excuse than this? More importantly, they felt that what Han Fei said was very reasonable. Someone immediately praised, "Although I haven't fought with Brother Hanjia, I'm ashamed of your wisdom." Someone chimed in, "That's right. Such wisdom is rare even in the Ice God Gorge." The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "I don't believe you. If you want to take advantage of me, just say it. Why do you have to find an excuse for me?" Yu Kaling pondered for a moment. "Well, okay. We can hunt for treasures, but don't cause a riot. If there is a riot, we must stop it. Don't be too far away. We must take care of each other." As soon as Yu Kaling finished talking, everyone rushed out with a whoosh. Only Han Fei was calm and didn't prepare to hunt for treasures. Yu Kaling said in surprise, "Yu Hanjia, aren't you going to look for some resources? The peak-level sea spirit needs a lot of resources." Han Fei smiled faintly. The Ice Mountain City is so big that almost all the places that can be sensed have been scanned. The key lies in the caves and arrays that can shield the senses. In such a place, I'll be lucky if I get it, and I'll be doomed if I don't. Yu Kaling glanced at Han Fei with appreciation. Sure enough, no one who can reach the peak-level sea spirit at such a young age is simple. Yu Kaling nodded. Okay. That makes sense. See you later. As soon as Yu Kaling left, Han Fei's eyes flickered. Ha, you want me to manage the order? Are you kidding me? How can I have that time? However, since he had come to the Ice Mountain City, he had blown up the city the first time. What should he do the second time? Han Fei scanned with his perception and secretly stretched out the void lines. In the distance, a black crystal sea serpent was drilling a hole. Suddenly, a big pincer clamped over. The hydralisk was shocked and swung its long tail, but it was still half a step too late. Kacha! The serpent's body was directly clamped in half, but the serpent was not dead. It was immediately furious. Why did you attack me? Many people nearby looked over, but the crab still did what it wanted and swept its pincers again. In the eyes of the strong, the Ice Mountain City is nothing. Instead of searching, it's better to rob. They are all ownerless and can only be obtained with strength. As soon as the big crab finished speaking, a shrimp soldier jumped up and stabbed a starfish to death with his spear. Then, he shouted, "Who stole the resources in my cave? Give them back to me." When there was one, there were two, and when there were two, there were three. After two people attacked, another half of the mermaids took action. Lowly lobster, put down my sea-swallowing seashell. A lobster raised its pincers. I discovered it first. Are you looking down on us lobsters? Who? Of course, you're not qualified to compete with me. You're asking to be killed. Bam! 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 For a moment, the parties fought fiercely. In an instant, they were all furious. Han Fei, the initiator of the fight, moved through the ruins unhurriedly, occasionally capturing a sea demon, causing some trouble, and occasionally digging out a sea-swallowing seashell from the ruins. Gradually, the Ice Mountain City became lively again. Because of the unknown reasons, there were more and more fights here. Yukaling had just reached a place where two half-mermaids were fighting. "I order you to stop." However, one of them seemed to have been scared by Yukaling. Then, he was pierced through by a harpoon and died. The man holding the harpoon widened his eyes. "I didn't. It bumped into my muzzle." Yukaling's face was cold. "Are you implying that I'm blind?" Chapter 12:16. Control was never as easy as sabotage. Yukaling was only a member of the patrol team, so she could only temporarily detain those who she thought were villains. However, there were so many creatures looking for opportunities in the ruins, and conflicts were inevitable. In the beginning, within a radius of hundreds of kilometers, there might only be 2 or 3 conflicts. But at some point in time, this number had doubled. Of course, within 100 kilometers, the number of fights increased from 2 or 3 to 5, but the number was still very small. But don't forget, how many sea demons in the Iceberg City were weak. In the beginning, the creatures would still compare whose speed was faster, whose perception was higher, whose opportunities were better, relying on their own strength to dig up opportunities. However, as the number of battles and deaths gradually increased, people's hearts began to waver. "If others could fight, why couldn't I?" Han Fei wandered aimlessly for 6 hours, walking around the whole place. From time to time, he used the void lines to control 2 or 3 sea demons to fight for treasures, and some even fought fiercely. Of course, all the creatures controlled by Han Fei could not escape the fate of death. In Han Fei's heart, the old turtle said, "It's time to take action. Otherwise, the probability of death is too high. Someone will definitely notice the abnormality." Han Fei pondered for a moment. "It's only been 3 hours. Isn't it too fast?" Suddenly, more than 200 kilometers away from Han Fei, Yukaling shouted, "Stop! Don't kill each other." Han Fei smiled. "What a naive half-mermaid, but you don't know how sinister people are." Han Fei also shouted, "Grab resources, but don't kill each other." While shouting, he pretended to be surprised and said, "Kaling, you're here too." Yukaling hadn't seen Han Fei for 6 hours and thought he had left alone. It turned out that he was also maintaining order. The funny thing was that those people who came with her had long disappeared. Who knew where they had gone to plunder? Yukaling said, "Great, let's act together later." However, what Yukaling didn't notice was that Han Fei was smiling mysteriously at this moment. Suddenly, in the distant sky, a massive amount of spiritual energy surged and glowed. The density of the spiritual energy attracted the attention of all the living beings in the surroundings. Someone exclaimed, "What a dense spiritual energy," accompanied by the impact of the multicolored light. A new pit must have been dug out. Someone was shocked. "Is it the original site of the trading valley?" Someone took a deep breath. It's indeed in the direction of the trading valley. For a moment, countless people gasped. Wasn't the trading valley blown into ruins long ago? Moreover, countless people had already sensed that there was nothing there. Where did this terrifying spiritual energy come from? At this moment, Han Fei sensed a divine sense scanning this place, and the old turtle reminded him, "Venerable, venerable." Han Fei was well aware of this. At this moment, he looked in the direction of the trading valley in shock and shouted, "Kai Ling, let's go. It's going to be chaotic over there." Yukaling gritted her teeth and looked at the brawler who had run away. She felt her scalp go numb and thought to herself, "Why are there so many things?" Venerable said, "Let's go. Hurry up." The Venerable scanned and found some broken arrays in the depths of the ruins of the trading valley. And in the array, there was a broken sun-moon shell. In the distant void, a seahorse shook its head slightly. That person had just escaped. There was no reason for him to go to the ruins to cause trouble. As for the Sun Moon shell, let them grab it. As soon as Han Fei and Yukaling arrived at the ruins of the trading valley, they found that it was already surrounded by thousands of creatures. There were crabs, lobsters, flood snakes, half-mermaids, sharks, luminous jellyfish, void-breaking conches. Han Fei thought to himself, in this case, the more chaotic it is, the better. He might even be able to retrieve the resources that he had thrown out. After all, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. Normally speaking, whether it was a sea-swallowing seashell or a sun-moon shell, they were not only shells but also represented a space. Although space could also be broken, it was much more difficult to break than ordinary spaces. This sun-moon shell was just an accident, thinking that it was a resource left by the trading valley. But at this moment, the arrays were half hidden, and these treasure hunters didn't see the whole picture. They drilled into the holes one by one and drilled into the depths of the ruins. Suddenly, a half-mermaid grabbed a long spear and was about to stuff it into his sea-swallowing seashell, when he heard the shrimp soldier yell, "Let go, or I'll stab you to death." The half-mermaid growled, "Opportunities and treasures belong to the fated." Bam! The ice was directly blasted, and an overlord catfish was blasted away, its scales shattered. Seeing that it didn't get the sun-moon shell, the overlord catfish immediately roared, "There is a sun-moon shell stuffed with resources, and the treasures are scattered. Grab it." Wow! A sun-moon shell stuffed with resources. Many people were refreshed. The space of a sun-moon shell could reach at least a kilometer. The amount of resources that could be stored inside was much greater. Just the spiritual spring water that was leaking out had already caused a commotion in all directions. Who knew what other treasures were inside? Han Fei was sure that no one would pay attention to it. So, among the thousands of sea creatures, he randomly found a half-mermaid and stabbed it with the void lines. The half-mermaid was refreshed and roared, "Who dares to take it all? Everyone, kill him." The half-mermaid controlled by Han Fei rushed into the ruins, and its harpoon pierced the ice with full power. A jellyfish burst out an electric current and roared, "Get lost." A purple sand eel was stabbed with a spear and roared, "You're courting death." Bam! 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 It felt like this place was in a mess. Han Fei and Yukaling were thinking about how to deal with it. Yukaling was having a headache. They were all troublemakers. How could she deal with them? Bam! Suddenly, the half-mermaid controlled by Han Fei was pierced through by a shrimp soldier. In the shrimp soldier's speechless and horrified gaze, with a bang, the half-mermaid blew itself up. This explosion seemed to have destroyed some of the remaining formations in the ruins. Suddenly, the spiritual energy was abundant. A superior-grade divine weapon flew out from the explosion. "Oh my god, it's a high-quality divine weapon. Catch it!" Yukaling shouted, "Don't panic. Don't kill it." When Yukaling felt that no one was in a good mood, she saw Han Fei take a step forward, condense a big hand in the air, and slap a flood snake away. Then, the water rippled, and a water snake coiled up the high-quality divine weapon and rushed towards Han Fei. Huh! A black giant shark, spewing out strong winds and condensing a big horn on its head, rushed directly at Han Fei. An ice kiss flicked its tail and froze the space within 100 meters around Han Fei. An old turtle shouted, "Let go of the divine weapon." Yukaling was shocked. "You Hanja, don't fight now." However, Han Fei roared in a low voice, "All of you, stop. Divine weapons belong to those who are virtuous. Look at you. What are you doing?" Cold wind harpoon smashed the tail of the icy kiss with a casual slap. Letting the black giant shark attack, Han Fei pointed his harpoon at the huge turtle shell. Many people were taken aback by the scene. Yukaling was also slightly surprised. The giant shark and the old turtle were not weak and both had the strength of a peak-level law enforcer. Otherwise, they wouldn't have come to snatch this high-quality divine weapon. However, they couldn't even shake Han Fei. In an instant, demonic energy surged from Han Fei's body, and his eyes were cold as he launched the sea god strike. Bam! Crack! Two cracks appeared on the old turtle's turtle shell. Ah! Han Fei grabbed the high-quality divine spear with one hand and shouted coldly, "A bunch of good-for-nothings. It's just a sun-moon shell. You've reached the peak of the sea spirit realm. Don't you think it's better for you to share it?" As he spoke, Han Fei changed the topic. "Since you're fighting for this sun-moon shell, why don't I help you take it?" Suddenly, a long tentacle came from the void, and a big octopus smashed through the ruins. "Don't listen to him. You just want it. If you have the ability, come down and fight me." Han Fei shouted, "Do you think I dare not?" Swish! Yu Kailing quickly appeared beside Han Fei. "Stop, all of you. I'm Yu Kailing, the external attendant of the Ice God Gorge and the inspector of the Ice Mountain City. All of you, stop." Han Fei really wanted to roll his eyes at her. If you were a Tao-seeking realm demon, someone would definitely listen to you. However, you're also a peak-level sea spirit now. No matter what your identity is, no one will believe you if you don't show it completely. Sure enough, Han Fei shouted, "It's ownerless." "Inspector, why do you intervene?" Han Fei's eyes were cunning. There was still a lot of spiritual spring in the sun-moon shell. As long as they fought for it, it would all explode. At that time, the spiritual spring would gush out, the divine weapons would float in the air, and the scene would be chaotic. As an explorer, Han Fei really didn't care about these resources at all. Otherwise, 5 million caddies of spiritual spring wouldn't have exploded so easily. However, just when Han Fei was looking forward to the outbreak of a chaotic battle, the void was suddenly torn apart, and a Tao-seeking realm demon walked out of the void. He first glanced at Yu Kailing and the others, then at Han Fei, and finally at the sea demons who were fighting for the spiritual spring. Huh? Han Fei was a little surprised. This Tao-seeking realm demon was a bit strange. He looked like a human. If it weren't for the webbed hands and gills on his neck, Han Fei would definitely think that he was a human. Otherwise, he would be a venerable if he looked like a human. Humph. This person grabbed the sun-moon shell with a big hand, crossed dozens of barriers, and directly grasped it. At this moment, countless people were shocked to find that a Tao-seeking realm demon was here. Yu Kailing hurriedly cupped her hands. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Wen Dao." The man looked indifferent. "A bunch of good-for-nothings. Why are you fighting for such a small profit?" With that said, the man looked at Yu Kailing. "And you are the strongest here. You are hesitant and lack means. Go back to the Ice God Gorge first." The man glanced around and finally fixed his eyes on Han Fei. "You are not bad. Why haven't I seen you before?" Han Fei hurriedly cupped his hands. "Mr. Wen Dao, I have just advanced to the peak-level sea spirit." The man grunted. "You have some strength. Come back to the Ice God Gorge with me." Immediately, this man's voice shook and spread for thousands of kilometers. "The top heavenly talent of the royal city wants to select followers. There were 3 personal attendants and 8 ordinary attendants. The quota is limited. All peak-level sea spirits have a chance. If you want to come to the Ice God Gorge arena quickly." Apex. Chapter 12-17. What Han Fei was upset about was that his plan was ruined by a Tao-seeking realm demon when it was about to stir up a storm. At this moment, Yu Kailing, who had no choice but to take Han Fei and the others to the Ice God Gorge. Han Fei felt it was a pity that he had lost a sun-moon shell for no reason. It was taken away by the old man just now. Although he used the sun-moon shell as bait, because this was his own trap, he had plenty of opportunities to snatch the resources back. At the very least, he could control others to snatch the resources back. Not only would he not lose his resources, but he might also cause a war. But now it was all ruined. Before Han Fei asked, someone asked, "Sister Kailing, why did Mr. Wen Dao show up in person?" Is the person from the King City very important? Someone echoed, yes. Isn't Mr. Wen Dao already at the peak of Dao seeking? Why does he need to show up for such a trivial matter? Someone said, that depends on who comes from the King City. Hasn't Mr. Wen Dao always wanted to go to the King City? Maybe this is an opportunity. Yu Keiling shouted in a low voice, okay, don't ask too much about Mr. Wen Dao. But this time, you can compete for him. If you really follow him, you may have a chance to go to the King City. Someone said in surprise, Sister Keiling, didn't you come from the King City? Maybe you know the person who comes. Yu Keiling shook her head slightly. When I was in the King City, I was also humble, and I had no time to meet the real heavenly talents. Han Fei couldn't help but interject, what is the King City like? There was absolutely nothing wrong with this question. Han Fei really wanted to know. Not surprisingly, the rest of them should also want to know. Yu Keiling shook her head slightly. In fact, you all have a beautiful imagination about the King City. In fact, it is not as beautiful as you think. I can only say, if you have a chance to go there in the future, don't compete. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. Don't compete. Does this mean that the competition in the Sea Demon King City is very fierce? Well, come to think of it, the royal city was the dreamland of the sea demons. There were countless sea demons who wanted to go there, and they would definitely fight to the death for it. Han Fei wondered what he could do if he had a chance to go to the Sea Demon King City. He couldn't figure it out. In any case, if he had a choice, if he could steal one, he would definitely do it. However, it was impossible for him to live there. He would rather not go there than live there. He still had to return to Yinyang Heaven to fight. He had no time to waste in the Sea Race Royal City in Shuemu Heaven. The Ice God Gorge was a pair of underwater abyssal canyons completely condensed by 10,000-year-old ice. When they arrived at the Ice God Gorge, they felt that the surrounding temperature could freeze not their bodies but their souls. When Han Fei discovered this, he heard Yu Keiling say, be careful when you come to the Ice God Gorge for the first time. Don't be careless. The freezing power here can freeze your soul. Someone added, in the past, the Ice God Gorge was open to sea demons, but people often suffered from frostbite, so creatures below the sea spirit realm were no longer allowed to enter. Han Fei secretly took a breath and couldn't help but say, in this case, isn't the permanent population of the Ice God Gorge very small? Yu Keiling said, not only us, but also a small number of azure sea blue demons and other sea creatures who have not chosen to transform. Han Fei couldn't help but frown. Yes, on this trip to the Shuemu Heaven, he met a large number of sea creatures who had not yet transformed. They could also talk, provoke, and fight. Different from the Yinyang Heaven, the sea creatures there were either inferior man-fish, red demons, or half-mermaids. It seemed that in terms of racial classification, the level of the sea creatures in the Shuemu Heaven was much higher than that in the Yinyang Heaven. Yu Keiling said, but there are not many sea creatures here, about 2,000 or so, and the rest don't stay in the Ice God Gorge. Just like you, maybe you didn't choose the Ice God Gorge but chose to travel outside. Many sea demons choose this way, thinking that it is more free outside. Pooh! Han Fei didn't know whether they were free or not, but he almost cursed out loud. Damn it, there were 2,000 sea spirits in the realm of ice and the Ice God Gorge. If they had a passage to the Yinyang sky, wouldn't they be invincible? Suddenly, in his mind, the old turtle's voice said, I feel that there seems to be a secret here. There seems to be something unusual in the deepest part of the ice gorge below. Han Fei asked, what secret? The old turtle said, I can only vaguely feel it. If I want to spy on it, I'm not strong enough with my current strength. Han Fei couldn't help but look down at the huge abyss below. Secret? If there was a chance, wouldn't it have been taken away by a strong master? Why would it still stay here? They flew all the way, and under the leadership of Yu Keiling, they swam directly to the abyssal chasm of the Ice God Gorge. It was dark all around. When Han Fei swam past, a large area of blue algae suddenly lit up on the ice cliff, and then, like a galaxy spreading all over the sky, the endless blue algae flickered. Han Fei couldn't help but be amazed. In terms of the magnificence of nature and the novelty of life forms, the scenery in the ocean was the best. After diving all the way for more than 20,000 meters, Yukaling took Han Fei to the cliff wall. After this collision, the scene in front of them changed, and colorful light shone. This valley seemed to have been completely hollowed out, and a strange oval-shaped beehive-like building stood in front of them. Because there were too many glowing algae and crystal stones here, the light was like shallow water, and they could see things clearly. The brightness even surpassed that of moonlight. After the tower, there was not much visible space. Except for the caves drilled out of the ice rampart, several ice palaces were printed on the ice. Han Fei only took a glance and knew that there was an illusion formation. As long as they walked in, they should be able to enter the ice and go to the so-called palace. On the ground more than 300 kilometers away, there was an upright fish bone on the ground. It seemed to be a hole, and people could occasionally be seen drilling into it. And the direction that Yukaling took Han Fei and the others to was also that place. Yukaling said, "This is the arena of the Ice God Gorge. It is usually a place where the strong of the Ice God Gorge practice combat skills and fight with each other. Occasionally, they will announce important events here." Someone said nervously, "I have already heard the roars in the arena. Has the selection already begun?" Someone sped up. "I heard that the heavenly talents of the King's City are very powerful. I want to see how powerful they are." Just after they arrived at the entrance, someone suddenly perceived, and someone in the air asked, "Who is this person? I've never seen him before." Yukaling said, "Master Qi, this person is called Yuhanjia. Today, we happened to meet him, and he broke through to the peak level of sea spirit. Later, Mr. Wendao appreciated him and made an exception to let him come here. Mr. Wendao seemed to be in this arena." At this moment, he said to Han Fei via voice transmission, "Don't stop the peak level sea spirits who come here today. There is still a group behind." "Yes. Mr. Wendao." Han Fei thought to himself, "Fortunately, I've completely become a sea demon. Otherwise, I would be a little panicked if I came to their lair." When they entered the underground cave house and passed through a layer of seals, they suddenly heard waves of dong, dong, dong. In their field of vision, almost all the people of the Ice God Gorge were here. On the periphery of the arena, there were ice platforms protruding from the cliff. Everywhere else seemed to be arenas. At the bottom of the valley, it was like a hot spring valley, with smoke curling up. In the smoke, a half-mermaid who looked very similar to a human stood proudly, holding a red spear in his hand. Beside him, there were 7 people besieging him. His spear light pierced through the void, and the speed of his attack was so fast that ordinary peak-level sea spirits couldn't defend against it at all. Beside Han Fei, someone exclaimed, "So fast." Yukaling gritted her teeth and said, "He has comprehended the close distance technique." When Yukaling spoke, the half-mermaid suddenly raised his head, looked at them, and smiled. The half-mermaid said, "You're quite knowledgeable. You even know the close distance technique. Just based on this knowledge, all of you can come at me together." Everyone was stunned, including Han Fei. They had just arrived and they were going to fight. Someone else asked, "Sister Kai Ling, do you know him?" Yukaling shook her head slightly. "I'm not qualified. Remember, in front of the closed distance technique, space is never distance." There were 17 people in total, and the half-mermaid below laughed aloud. "Oh. It turns out to be a guy who didn't pass the trial in the royal city. But since he can go to the royal city to take the trial, he's quite capable. Okay, come at me together." Han Fei really wanted to go up and slap him. "I've already killed several heavenly talents in the royal city. Why are you pretending to be a big shot here?" Suddenly, a voice sounded in the minds of Han Fei and the others. It seemed to be the voice of Mr. Wendao. The voice said, "You must go all out and don't dare to be careless. This guy is called the Fish Dragon King. It is said that he has the bloodline of the ancient Dragon King and is currently ranked 10th on the heavenly talent list of the Bai royal city. Because he was challenged, he had to come out to the front line to prove his strength. If you can follow him, it will be good for you. Han Fei was slightly taken aback. Who was the enemy he encountered during his tribulation? He seemed to be ranked 89th on the heavenly talent list. But this guy happened to be ranked 10th, so there should be a certain gap in strength. Judging from the strength of this peak level sea spirit, he directly challenged Yukaling and the other 17 people. This was enough to show his pride. However, Han Fei was still a little disdainful. Just because he has the bloodline of the ancient Dragon King, he gave himself the name Fish Dragon King. As the saying went, the tacit understanding between men transcended races. According to Han Fei's understanding, this name must be to show off. Otherwise, the value of this name would be meaningless. The Fish Dragon King shouted, "Hurry up, I'm in a hurry. I don't have time to waste here. Come at me together." Yukaling whispered, "Go all out, go." At Yukaling's order, the 17 people immediately dispersed, and many companion spirits flew in the air. Some people flashed out, and spear light jumped like starlight. The Fish Dragon King smiled disdainfully, touched the spearhead with his foot, and the body of the spear trembled slightly, directly blocking the opponent's ultimate move. In the sky full of attacks, the Fish Dragon King shouted, too slow, and not strong enough." Bam! 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 The spear pierced the void, and many people didn't even know where the spear shadow appeared. They were clearly a kilometer away, but it was as if they were 3 feet in front of the spear. They couldn't even block a single blow. Including Han Fei, he also encountered the spear shadow. However, Han Fei tapped his feet, made a strange footwork, slightly twisted his body, and easily dodged. 64-dimensional fish dragon dance, Han Fei hadn't used it for a long time. This was a divine skill for field combat, most suitable for group battles. When Han Fei easily dodged the Fish Dragon King's attack, at least 7 or 8 people were surprised, including the Fish Dragon King himself. Han Fei immediately realized that he was too careless. How could he deal with the 10th on the heavenly talent list so casually? Therefore, as soon as Han Fei stepped out and dodged the rod, with a crack, Han Fei suddenly covered his waist. Ah! What a fast spear technique! My waist is twisted. Top. Chapter 12:18. No matter what Han Fei said, everyone could see that he had miraculously dodged the Ichthyosaur King's attack. The Ichthyosaur King grinned and stabbed its spear at Han Fei at the speed of lightning. Han Fei was in a dilemma, wondering how he could perform such a difficult battle technique. Looking at the spear that was as fast as lightning, Han Fei's expression turned serious. He clenched his teeth and said, "Forget it, I'm a Sky Pride. What's wrong with learning some special battle techniques?" Han Fei leaped up and the harpoon in his hand shot out in a spiral. Clang! The harpoon in Han Fei's hand was sent flying, and Han Fei took advantage of the moment when the weapons clashed and flew away. In midair, Han Fei waved his hand and the harpoon returned to him, which piqued the interest of many people. Someone chuckled. This kid's reflexes are fast, and his movement technique is quite clever too. He's good at using the displacement technique. The Ichthyosaur King did not hit Han Fei after 2 consecutive attacks. Instead of being surprised, it was happy and said, "Not bad. Looks like there are a few good ones in the outer ocean." 6 Mountains Crumbling Dragon. The Ichthyosaur King swung its spear and a reddish-brown dragon shadow leaped out. Han Fei was slightly surprised when he saw the dragon shadow. It looked very similar to a real dragon. Could this Ichthyosaur King really be of the ancient Dragon King's bloodline? The dragon soared across the 4 seas with a dazzling red light. Its claws slammed down, but it was actually a spear shadow that broke through the void. That slap struck out, and the 3 of them were slapped. Then, it swung its tail and left a white mark in the void. Bang, bang, bang in the blink of an eye, only 5 people were left out of the 17. This alone was enough to show how powerful the Ichthyosaur King was. Han Fei secretly analyzed. In terms of speed, the Ichthyosaur King was comparable to him in the past. In terms of strength, although it was not as strong as Yang Nanshi, it was still much stronger than Chu Kuangren. When strength and speed were sufficient, the quality of battle techniques and talents of spiritual beasts could only play a supporting role. At this moment, one of them was enforcing the ice power, while the other was enforcing the water cage. The two of them worked together and sealed the space at the same time. One of them shouted, "Sister Kai Ling, Yu Cheng, Yu Hanjia, attack!" Yu Keiling held the spear in her hand and let out a delicate cry. The image of a manatee appeared and whipped the spear with its tail. The spear was like a nail that pierced directly into the water cage. The half-mermaid named Yu Cheng's body expanded, and black thorns protruded from the surface of his body, turning into long thorns that flickered and pierced into the water too. As for Han Fei, he simply launched a Sea King strike that was not very distinctive. The Fish Dragon King sneered. "Humph. It's just a small trick. Deacon, this kind of useless law enforcement is really too weak." Roar. Bang. The water prison suddenly exploded, and hundreds of illusory dragon heads rushed out. Bang bang bang. Wherever the dragon's head collided, all the attacks were shattered. Even Yu Keiling spat out mouthfuls of blood. But he didn't want to vomit blood. How could he spit out his resplendent golden essence blood just like that? Han Fei stepped on the water in mid-air, his figure drifting and turning into a series of afterimages, as if he was avoiding the twisting dragon heads. However, with this buffer, Han Fei had enough time to get some fake blood and put it in his mouth. At this moment, except for Yu Keiling and Han Fei, the other 3 were vomiting blood crazily and were no longer able to fight. And among them, Han Fei was the one who looked as if nothing had happened. Swish! In the turbid ice, a spear light pierced through, accompanied by the figure of the Fish Dragon King. "You can block my attacks 3 times. You must not be weak. Take my dragon-fixing spear." Han Fei rolled his eyes, but he tried to twist his body, and the 64-dimensional fish dragon dance couldn't handle it at all. Clank, clank, clank. Han Fei's figure swayed from side to side, and he could only resist with his harpoon. In the eyes of others, even his magical footwork couldn't help him get out of this awkward situation. Someone shook his head slightly. Although this Yu Hanjia is not weak, he is still no match for the heavenly talents of the royal city. He is much weaker in both speed and strength. Someone chuckled. It's a pity that this Yu Hanjia has just advanced to the peak level sea spirit realm. Otherwise, he would be much better than you. Someone wondered, why didn't we find such a talent before? Someone laughed. I'm afraid he deliberately hid his strength. Now that he has a chance to go to the royal city, he suddenly revealed his strength. The Dao-seeking state monsters were talking about it, and Mr. Wen Dao, who looked like a human being, was a little puzzled. This kid's footwork is extremely weird. It seems to be more like a human's footwork, which requires a high mastery of the human body. Is this Yu Hanjia particularly suitable for a human body? Of course, because of the strong demonic energy on Han Fei, no one would suspect his true identity. In the field, Yu Keiling launched 7 spears in a row, which looked like 7 streams of light. However, the Fish Dragon King glanced back, swept its spear, and tried to blow Han Fei away with the tip of the spear. However, when the Fish Dragon King swept the army, Han Fei took advantage of this opportunity to slash with his harpoon, which was as fast as lightning, leaving a streak of fire on the Fish Dragon King's back. Boom! The dragon head phantom bombarded Han Fei and sent him flying. The latter pretended to roll dozens of times on the ground, and then struggled to prop up his body with the harpoon. The next moment, a beam of red light directly pierced through Yu Keiling. The Fish Dragon King said lightly, "You two are not bad, but your strength is a little weak and your speed is not fast enough." While speaking, the Fish Dragon King glanced at Han Fei. "Your speed is not bad, but your strength is not enough." The two of you will follow me for a period of time in the future. Han Fei stood up with a swish and hurriedly cupped his hands. Yes, my lord. Yu Keiling had a complicated look on her face. Sure enough, she was no match for the real strong. She could only bow at this moment. Yes, my lord. Because the battle was still going on, Yu Keiling and Han Fei were asked to wait on the side. When the two of them fought side by side, Han Fei exclaimed, "The heavenly talents of the royal city are really strong." Yu Keiling took a deep look at Han Fei. How did you manage to avoid every attack at such a terrifying speed? She said leisurely to Han Fei, I have mastered a law enforcement ability called Sea Demon's Sixth Sense. Huh? Yu Keiling asked, what does it feel like to be in the top 5? Han Fei replied, sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Cough, cough. While Yu Keiling was dumbfounded, many people looked at Han Fei. You make it sound so high and mighty, but this is what you mean. However, Han Fei paused and said, Sixth sense, commonly known as premonition. On a high platform, Yuan Dao chuckled and thought to himself, interesting little guy. The Fish Dragon King stood for a few more battles, and almost no one could rival it. The only guy that was favored was a female half-mermaid, who was chosen because she was beautiful. The Fish Dragon King laughed loudly. Alright, it's just the 3 of you. As for the others, well, those who can withstand 2 strikes from me just now, come and fight me. Han Fei watched the whole process with a smile without saying anything. This Fish Dragon King gave him the feeling that it was a heavenly talent from a big family in the Thousand-Star City. The tone, the arrogance, and the condescending attitude were so similar. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder what kind of place the Sea Race Royal City was. Why was such a heavenly talent of the Sea Race born here? Logically speaking, this Fish Dragon King was not weak. Its real strength should be comparable to Yang Nanshi's, and its speed was faster than Yang Nanshi's, so it should be in the top 5 of the heavenly talent list of the Thousand-Star City. However, in Han Fei's eyes, it was very weak. After all, this Fish Dragon King was just a peak-level sea spirit. If Han Fei really wanted to, he could kill it with a finger. It wouldn't even have a place to run. Yuan Dao said indifferently, since you've been selected, I'll tell you the truth. This time, your mission is to follow the Dragon King into the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, compete with the Shuemu Heaven and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City, and explore the secrets of this place. The Fish Dragon King said arrogantly, the reason why I'm taking you is just to make some people feel at ease. In fact, I alone am enough to enter the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. You just need to not hold me back. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. At this moment, a turtle man in turtle shell said in a low voice, Young Master Dragon King, this trip is very dangerous. Be careful. After all, many heavenly talents have died in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. The Fish Dragon King smiled disdainfully. Am I that useless? I heard that in this trip to the Ancient Realm, the Baibei Royal City, the Shuemu Heaven, and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City will all send their top powerhouses? Yuan Dao suddenly said, that's not necessarily true. The cause of this incident was Han Fei's tribulation and Yi Yuchen's Dao. Now that the two of them have successfully passed it, why would the Baibei Royal City give up? A long battle is clearly not in the Shuemu Heaven's favor. That's why they can't settle things in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. The Fish Dragon King frowned. I don't understand. There are so many living beings in the Shuemu Heaven. Why can't the 2 royal cities work together to destroy them? Yuan Dao shook his head slightly. Of course not. First, although the Baibei Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City are both sea tribes, we're not on the same path. Moreover, the Shuemu Heaven has accumulated many powerhouses for tens of thousands of years. If we really go all out, the Baibei Royal City and the Blood Sea Divine Wood City will suffer heavy losses. In the end, this is a battle between powerhouses. We've been draining the Shuemu Heaven's strength to prevent them from continuously producing powerhouses. The tortoise man echoed, young master, if the other party didn't have a strange creature like the insect queen, the waterwood sky wouldn't be so difficult to deal with. Therefore, you can't underestimate the insect race in the waterwood sky. The fish dragon king snorted softly, it's fine. This trip will be a good opportunity to see what the experts of Shuemu Sky and Blood Sea Divine would have become. Remember the last time I came to the front line, I was still in the sea demon realm. By the way, will Han Fei enter the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm? Yu Wendao pondered for a moment before replying, the probability is extremely high. This person had just gone through the 4-9 monarch's tribulation. Whether or not his strength had stabilized was not a question. At a time like this, it was natural for him to cultivate to the peak of the Tao-seeking realm. It's too risky to enter the Thousand Mountains Ancient Realm. Normal people wouldn't choose that. The Ichthyosaur king licked its lips. What a pity. I heard that Yu Wangyu, that trash, was killed by a single finger, causing our Baibei royal city to lose all face. If only that Han Fei was here, I would definitely chop off his head. The tortoise said, young master, don't be conceited. Many people are waiting to see you on this trip. The fish dragon king smirked. Humph. Then let them have a good look. These chatter were like secrets in the ears of Han Fei and the others. The onlookers were shocked. They were shocked by the so-called Thousand Mountains Ancient Realm. Han Fei frowned. Is this Ichthyosaur king arrogant? Tsk, tisk, I'll kill him first after I sneak into the Thousand Mountains Ancient Realm. Soon, the crowd in the arena dispersed. Only the Ichthyosaur king, Han Fei, Yu Kailing, and a beautiful half-mermaid were left. There were a total of 8 people, all peak-level sea spirits. They were here to protect the Ichthyosaur king. Of course, it was an exaggeration to say that they were here to protect the Ichthyosaur king. With the Ichthyosaur king's strength, except for Han Fei, none of the people here could defeat him. It was more like this guy had found a bunch of thugs for himself. In the eyes of some people, it was natural that they didn't have to do everything themselves. Han Fei thought to himself. The old tortoise suddenly said, boy, I have something to discuss with you. Han Fei was confused. What is it? The old tortoise said, although this little tortoise is weak and only has the strength of a demigod, it shares the same origin as me after all. I can find a chance to kill it. Then I can separate a wisp of my soul and occupy its body. Han Fei, Apex. Chapter 12-19. The Fish Dragon King was here to gain experience, or to gain experience. It looked at Han Fei and the others with an arrogant expression. He said, I don't care what you were planning to do or what path you took. But if you follow me today, you must be prepared to die at any time. The path I walk is always on the edge of danger. But as long as you don't die, your strength will definitely grow. When I conquer the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, I will bring you back to the royal city. It will be your honor. Hiss. The others didn't hear it, but the promise to bring them back to the royal city made everyone excited. Han Fei was no exception. He pretended to be energetic, and his eyes glowed. Yu Kailing seemed to be determined. Han Fei knew that she had been to the royal city before, but the process must not have been very smooth. This time, the Fish Dragon King seemed to have ignited a new fighting spirit in her. I pledge my life to follow you, Master. Master, why should we be afraid of death? The beautiful half-mermaid leaned against the Fish Dragon King and said coquettishly, Master Dragon King, I believe that when you return to the royal city, they will definitely look at you in a new light. Ha ha ha. You know me. Han Fei looked at the Fish Dragon King and unconsciously put his hand on the girl's shoulder. He thought, how old is this girl? She's still trying to seduce me. Yu Kailing was not as carefree as the girl. After seeing this, she looked away and pretended not to see it. The Fish Dragon King smiled. In that case, Mr. Wendao, when do we set off? The fish asked, tomorrow morning. Prepare some spiritual fruits and resources. The Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm lacks spiritual energy and energy. The Fish Dragon King smiled at the beautiful half-mermaid. Looks like we have to wait for another day. Forget it, let's go. What's your name? Lan Shui. Master, my name is Lan Shui. The fish dragon king nodded slightly. Follow me. I think you're quite strong. I didn't understand something just now. Let's go to your cave abode. The others pretended not to hear it. Han Fei couldn't help but scratch his head. Fuck, how arrogant is this? This is outrageous. Proclaiming that in the day, Han Fei couldn't help but ask in a low voice, why is her surname not you? He said this telepathically, but Han Fei deliberately made it so that everyone could hear him. The beautiful half-mermaid's body stiffened slightly and she cursed Han Fei many times in her heart. The others looked at Han Fei speechlessly. After the fish dragon king and Lan Shui left, someone secretly gave Han Fei a thumbs up and said, Bro, you're really tough to say that to his face. Han Fei looked confused. No, I'm just curious. Han Fei was just curious. After all, he had never seen a half-mermaid surnamed Lan before. In terms of surnames, there wasn't much difference between the Shuemu heaven and the Yinyang heaven. Most of them had the surname Yu as their surname. At that time, a half-mermaid patted Han Fei's shoulder silently. How uncreative. Since the fish dragon king had taken a liking to it, it had to be given an elegant name like a human. Only then will it have its own uniqueness. The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. So, he was just deceiving himself. What made Han Fei even more speechless was that this name could be changed at will. Yu Kailing said, in the sea race, no one remembers the weak. When you become strong, whether you have a name or not, someone will remember you. Han Fei was full of disdain. So what if he didn't cultivate his strength? But he was good at picking up girls, just like Zhang Xuanyu. Oh, no, Zhang Xuanyu still had some integrity, but this fish dragon king didn't. Yu Kailing glanced at Han Fei and said, come back tomorrow. Since you have come to the Ice God Gorge, you can open a cave residence in the Ice God Gorge, preferably on the periphery. Han Fei frowned. Is it the abyssal chasm outside? Someone sneered. It doesn't matter if you want to live there. However, is it uncomfortable to live in the ice cave we are in now? Yu Kailing said, the abyssal chasm outside is a place for training, not a place to live. You can try it. The deeper you go, the stronger the power that can freeze the soul there is. If the venerables don't tell us, none of us will know what is down there. 2 hours later. In this huge chasm of the glacier canyon, Han Fei had dived 10,000 meters and had been frozen into an ice block. Mainly because Han Fei knew that someone was observing him, he didn't dare to continue diving deeper, otherwise his aptitude would be too abnormal. In his mind, Han Fei said, how about it? Can you feel what it is now? This power is really terrifying. It can even freeze the soul. The old turtle pondered and said, I can't feel it. Although my soul is damaged now, it shouldn't be blocked by an ordinary secret place. This shows that the threat here has reached above the venerable realm. Don't think about it now. Han Fei curled his lips. Humph. The venerable realm? I would have gone home at that time. The old turtle said, it's not that you can't come back in the future. Han Fei thought about it. Forget it. Anyway, he was in someone else's territory. Even if there was really something good here, it shouldn't fall into his hands. However, just when Han Fei was about to leave, his eyebrows suddenly trembled. He felt that Little Black and Little White wanted to come out. Han Fei's expression didn't change. As he went back, he wondered, why did Little Black and Little White react? Of course, Han Fei couldn't directly call Little Black and Little White out here. After all, this was not his territory. Sure enough, when Han Fei just returned to the abyss, he saw Yuan Dao looking at him quietly. When Han Fei went into the abyssal chasm, he had already known that someone was watching him, but what was wrong with satisfying his curiosity? If it weren't for someone watching him, he wouldn't have only dived 10,000 meters. Han Fei hurriedly cupped his hands. Nice to meet you, Mr. Wendao. Yu Wendao stepped to Han Fei's side, then looked down at the extremely dark chasm and said, "How do you feel down there?" Han Fei looked a little reserved and replied stiffly, "Cold." Yu Wendao smiled slightly. "Young man, you have hidden a lot of strength, haven't you?" Han Fei was slightly surprised. Was he seen through so easily? Why? The humanoid old man who looked like an old pedant smiled faintly. "It's not difficult to guess. Mortals all have pride. Some show it on their faces, and some hide it in their hearts. However, sometimes these things can't be hidden. Occasionally, a little inadvertent movement will often expose them. Of course, this also depends on others noticing you." Han Fei didn't speak. He didn't know what this man was thinking. Why would a peak-level Dao-seeking realm expert chat with him? Yu Wendao asked, "What do you think of the Fish Dragon King's strength?" Seeing that his trick was seen through, Han Fei relaxed a little and replied seriously, "Very strong." Yu Wendao smiled faintly. "How long can you last in his hands?" Han Fei was just about to speak, when the old turtle in his body said, "Tell me more." Han Fei thought of something and also smiled faintly. "Mr. Wendao, are you so sure of my strength?" Yu Wendao said calmly, "Others may not be sure, but I have a good eye for people. Since I asked you, I have already considered your strength." Han Fei gasped. "If the Fish Dragon King is only in the realm he showed today, I can last for 100 minutes without being defeated." 100 minutes was a very vague concept. For two people with similar strength, let alone 100 minutes, it was possible for them to fight for a day and a night. However, a figure like the Fish Dragon King did have the right to be arrogant. Its strength was indeed not weak, and its speed was indeed fast. If this was the standard, 99% of the Sea Clan's experts in the same realm as him would be defeated. Yu Wendao's eyes flashed and he said, "That's good. Yu Hanjia, it's a pity that you have been hiding for too long and only came to my attention now. Otherwise, your life would have been changed." Han Fei was surprised. Why does this sound so much like a bluff? Yu Wendao continued, "My name only appears in the Ice God Gorge. You probably haven't heard of me before. Do you know why I chose the Ice God Gorge and why I'm called Dao Seeking?" Han Fei shook his head blankly. "I'd like to see what your purpose is." He said, "There is a great horror under the abyss of the Ice God Gorge. The reason why I stay in the Ice God Gorge is very simple. I just want to strengthen my Dao through the power of the frozen soul. In the Dao-seeking state, the stronger the Dao is, the stronger the Dao is. I've been suppressing my Dao in the Dao-seeking state. In order to understand the Dao-seeking state and pave the way for future generations, I wrote the Book of Changes. However, I haven't been able to find a successor. It's a pity." Han Fei laughed in his heart. The old turtle also said in Han Fei's mind, "Bullshit. The Dao in this man's body is chaotic. Only he has the Dao-seeking state. Bah, even I don't dare to be so shameless. This man is really shameless." Han Fei was even more amused. "I don't believe that there are people who are silent and selfless in this ocean world where the strong prey on the weak." Just by listening to Yu Wendao's bragging, Han Fei knew that this man's purpose was not simple. He even wanted to bluff him. But Han Fei looked very serious on the surface. "Lord Wendao cares about the Sea Clan, and I'm touched. However, why did you come to me? Although I think I'm not bad, compared to the Fish Dragon King, I'm still far behind." Yu Wendao's face turned slightly cold. "Of course, if I could use the Fish Dragon King, would I come to you?" Yu Wendao's face darkened. "There are only a few people who can catch my eye. If I didn't notice that you are talented, I wouldn't want to accept you as my successor." As he said, Yu Wendao didn't seem to be in a hurry. He handed a jade slip to Han Fei. But he said, "Not everyone can become my successor. Not everyone can cultivate this technique. Try it. If you can't do it, I won't accept you." Peak. Chapter 1220. Han Fei held a jade slip in his hand and sneered in his heart. Are you pretending to be mysterious? Those are all my leftovers. He scanned with his perception and information popped up in his mind. Book of Changes, Venerable Level, Low Quality, Incomplete, Introduction. Someone observed more than 100 great Daos and tried to fuse them into one. However, there were 3,000 Daos, each with different origins, and this technique forced them to be combined. This book focuses on the Tao of sacrifice. Cultivators can sacrifice their souls to obtain 100 marvelous methods. Deduced art, unknown deduction cost, 0/100 million note. When this technique is mastered, the cultivator will become a puppet. Fuck, Han Fei didn't know what to say at that time. This Yuan Dao was so vicious that it couldn't be any blacker. If this person doesn't die, I won't be able to rest easy. Han Fei said in his heart, this person looks like an old pedant, but I've never seen such a vicious person in my life. This time, it's either him or me. Old Turtle, when are we going to work together to kill this guy first? The old turtle said leisurely, at least we can't do it here. And although this person's Daos are mixed, he is definitely not weak in the Dao-seeking realm. I'm not strong enough to kill him without him knowing. Han Fei was speechless. Wait a minute, you are also an emperor. You can't even kill a semi-venerable. Who? The old turtle said angrily, how dare you say that? I'm just a soul, and I came out incomplete. More than half of my Daos were swallowed by this gourd, and even my Daos were taken by you to be refined into meridians. I should be thankful that I'm still alive. Do you want me to kill a semi-venerable without anyone knowing? Han Fei felt a little guilty. The old turtle did seem to be quite miserable. However, Han Fei didn't believe that he didn't have any capital. Han Fei immediately said, you can have the little turtle next to the fish dragon king. The old turtle was speechless. Do you think it's an ordinary peak-level Dao-seeking cultivator? It's also a semi-venerable. If we join hands, we can only fight one at most. If the two of them attack together, it's a problem whether we can escape or not. Han Fei curled his lips. Then what do you think I should do? Should I still practice this stupid technique? Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. What would happen if the old turtle practiced the Tao of Changes? Could Yuan Dao win against the old turtle? Han Fei immediately pointed at the jade slip and said, look at it yourself. I don't think anyone can practice this technique except you. The old turtle sneered and thought to himself, how can I cultivate this broken thing? However, when the old turtle swept out with his perception, he immediately shouted, this is simple. This person's understanding of the great Tao isn't even a billionth of this emperor's. Let this emperor test him a bit and squeeze him dry. Han Fei clenched his ass. No, I'm going to exploit you. It has nothing to do with me. The old turtle, that night. Han Fei dug a cave house for himself in the ice cave of the Ice God Gorge and openly sealed the entrance of the cave, regardless of what others thought. At this moment, Yuan Dao was secretly looking at the cave house that Han Fei opened, nodding from time to time and murmuring, sure enough, this kind of inexperienced boy is easy to fool. As long as I borrow the power of the great Tao in the future, I can slowly deprive his soul. At that time, we can easily seize his body, and stepping into the Tao will be a piece of cake. Yuan Dao was thinking about the future, and Han Fei was asking, how is it? Have you cultivated it? The old turtle said, not so fast. If you succeed in cultivating it immediately, doesn't it prove that you are more talented than the fish dragon king? Han Fei curled his lips. Yes. But I really want to kill that guy as soon as possible. Until the next morning. Han Fei suddenly felt a wisp of strange power being absorbed into his body, and he suddenly opened his eyes. What power? Han Fei could clearly sense that this power did not fall on him but was directly absorbed by the old turtle. Hee hee. The old turtle smiled coldly. Interesting. It turns out that this person is planning to use this method to make others sacrifice their souls so that he can easily possess them. Han Fei knew this, but he still asked, so, you sacrificed yourself? Humph. How can I be called sacrificing myself? I took the initiative to project a wisp of my soul over, but how can my soul be so easy to swallow? Han Fei frowned and couldn't help but ask, can you use this method to get out of my sea of consciousness? The old turtle's voice immediately sank. How can a mere semi-venerable bear my soul? Besides, if this emperor were to sacrifice my entire divine soul, this gourd would probably eat this emperor. Han Fei said with a smile, don't pretend. You can definitely get out part of it. Don't you want to separate a wisp of your soul and occupy the turtle next to the fish dragon king? This one is not weak, is it? It should be stronger than that one. Isn't that more to your liking? The old turtle sneered. What do you know? That turtle belongs to my clan. It's natural for me to use it. I know how to inherit the Taoist connotation with my body. But this person's Taoist connotation is chaotic and my body is useless. Otherwise, how could he think of this method of possession? Han Fei grinned. It doesn't matter. Anyway, with this method, you can at least get out part of your soul. Kill this fish first, then kill the turtle, and then kill the rest of the peak-level sea spirits. I won't panic at all. Han Fei thought that no matter how the old turtle complained to him, he was definitely not as weak as he said. But this old turtle must be afraid of the demon purification pot. Although they had an agreement now, Han Fei was still suspicious of this thing, which seemed a little too casual. Now that this opportunity had come, he might as well let the old turtle kill this fish first, and he could even cooperate with it to get the body of the turtle man. As for the old turtle wanting to kill him, he didn't believe it at all. Most of his soul was still locked in his body. What could he do? Han Fei's eyes suddenly flickered. If the old turtle could possess the body of the turtle man, then he could go to the so-called Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm to kill the Fish Dragon King and replace it. The old turtle seemed to know what Han Fei was thinking and immediately said, that's good. We don't have to be suspicious of each other. Fine, if I have a body and join hands with you, no one in the same realm can be our opponent. Han Fei grinned. Let's go to the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm first and then replace it. Ice God Gorge, hee, I will come back sooner or later. Han Fei only had one purpose to return to the Ice God Gorge, which was to find out what was under the abyssal canyon and why it attracted Little Black and Little White's attention. If it weren't for the fact that this was a place where strong masters lived, Han Fei really wanted to go down now. At this moment, Yuan Dao was a little dumbfounded. He guessed that Han Fei's strength should not be weak, and his soul should not be much weaker. However, in just one night, the quality of the soul that Han Fei sacrificed was astonishingly high. However, there seemed to be something wrong with this extremely high-quality soul. It was a bit too dark. It was he who swallowed this soul, but why did he have an extreme desire for power? Whoosh! Yuan Dao's first thought was that Han Fei was too eager for power, so the pursuit of power in his soul had reached an extreme point. Yuan Dao smiled faintly. It turns out that this is the real you. But it's better this way. The more you pursue power, the more you need my power. Hee, the next morning. Han Fei saw the Fish Dragon King walking over from afar with Lan Shui, in high spirits, while the old tortoise man stood quietly on an ice platform, waiting. In addition to Han Fei, there were actually nearly 200 peak-level law enforcers waiting here. It seemed that they were going to go together. Han Fei was slightly surprised. There are quite a lot of people going. Isn't it just the Fish Dragon King and me going? Yuan Dao's voice sounded on the ice platform. Everyone, enter the teleportation array. You can go. Han Fei glanced and saw that Yuan Dao seemed to be fine. Old turtle, why is he not hurt at all? The old turtle said, haste makes waste. This stupid technique can only sacrifice a little soul at a time. Otherwise, I would have eaten him already. Han Fei pondered and said, then when we leave the Ice God Gorge, sacrifice a few more times and eat him early. We have to separate from him first. There's no hurry. Aren't you going to the secret realm? After you go in, don't kill the Fish Dragon King first. Wait until I eat Yu Wendao first. Han Fei was stunned. Does it matter? The old turtle said, these two people must be protecting the fish dragon king. If he dies and they find out, what will happen? Han Fei nodded slightly. Okay. Then let's go to the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm first and act according to the situation. The fish dragon king had a good night. At this moment, he glanced at Han Fei and the others lazily. What are your names? Yu Kailing said, Master, Yu Kailing. Han Fei said, Yu Hanjia. The fish dragon king frowned slightly because Han Fei didn't address him respectfully. However, he didn't take it seriously. At most, he would throw him out to take care of the fish dragon king for a while. Thinking of this, the fish dragon king walked up to the ice platform with his head held high. He shouted in a low voice, let's go. Follow me to the ancient realm. Han Fei curled the corner of his mouth. You can only show off for a few more days. Yu Kailing glanced at Han Fei and was a little confused. This Yu Hanjia doesn't seem to respect the fish dragon king very much. Han Fei and the others followed him to the ice platform. There was a large teleportation array there, but they didn't know where it led to. Before entering the teleportation array, Yu Wendao glanced at Han Fei with an ambiguous smile. Han Fei thought, what are you looking at? I'll let you live for 2 more days at most. This old man is so evil. You want to take my body with a technique? Dream on. First update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 12:21. Han Fei thought he would be teleported to the entrance of some secret realm, but with a swoosh, he returned to the fire spring. Han Fei wanted to explore the outer sea, but for some reason, he kept wandering around the ice realm. At this moment, everyone stood in the air above the Inferno Spring. They realized that this place was completely empty. There was no one here. The Fish Dragon King was confused. Did they all go to the front line? Yu Wendao shook his head slightly. In the past few days, the earth string of the fire spring was attacked by Shuemu Tian. Then, a Dao-seeking state trader appeared in the Ice God Gorge and plundered the fire spring. Everyone is panicking. Those who didn't go to the front line should have gone to Ice Mountain City. The Fish Dragon King curled his lips. Traitor. Such creatures don't exist in the royal city. Let's go to the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Along the way, Yu Wendao and Prime Minister Turtle were escorting them. If there were no accidents, it shouldn't be just them going to the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Yu Wendao explained to the Ichthyosaur King, Dragon King, you have to remember one thing. You're not the only one who came to the royal city. You should know who you should trust and who you shouldn't. A fierce look flashed in the Fish Dragon King's eyes. Of course, I know very well. Just because I'm ranked 10th on the prodigy roll, there are many people who covet my position. But it doesn't matter. Let's settle this once and for all. It'll save us trouble in the future. As he spoke, Yu Wendao glanced at them and continued, the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm is said to be an ancient realm. Some people also call it the Lost World. In a sense, it can't even be considered a secret realm because there are only endless immortal souls and strange demon plants. Because it's sealed all year round, there are a lot of treasures there. It can be said that the worst treasures there are divine weapon materials. However, the spiritual chi and energy there are relatively sparse, so you have to prepare some spiritual fruits before you go in. You should have enough of those. Of course, although there are a lot of treasures, you have to be alive to take them. Also, there was something that had to be mentioned. If there was anyone here who could display the power of the Dao-seeking realm, they had to be careful. There was no rule suppression. Whoever uses the power of the Dao-seeking realm might encounter some inexplicable misfortune, or be targeted by the great Dao of the Thousand Mountains Ancient Realm. The Ichthyosaur King let out a disdainful laugh, Mr. Wendao, it's just a mystical ground. What's there to explain? The most dangerous ones are the people inside. The geniuses of the 4 clans from the Waterwood Sky and the bewitching idiots from the Blood Sea Divine Wood City. The old tortoise man added, young Master Dragon King, you have to be careful. After all, every clan has their own peerless geniuses. Take that Han Fei for example. He killed so many geniuses of my monarch city in one battle. He cannot be underestimated. The Ichthyosaur King said impatiently, it's not like he can enter the thousand-mountain ancient realm. Besides, he would have to suppress his cultivation if he went. Peak Sea Spirit, do you think I'm afraid of him? When have I, the Fish Dragon King, been afraid of anyone in the same realm? The Ichthyosaur King didn't care at all. He even looked back and said, after you enter, kill anyone from the waterwood sky. If you find a school of fiery red singing fish or a seductive woman wearing a red gauze dress, kill them all for me. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Wasn't the Ichthyosaur King talking about the Millennium Snapper? Han Fei couldn't help but feel excited. 2 monarch cities and the waterwood sky. 3 forces exploring the same place. There would probably be a bloodbath. The Fish Dragon King said leisurely, treasure hunting and hunting are one thing. Rumor has it that the thousand-mountain ancient realm has the foundation to become a monarch. Although no one has ever seen it, you can give it a try. Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Another opportunity to become a monarch? Let's see who gets it when we kill our way through that damn place. 4 hours later. The place where the ice domain and the sea of flames bordered was not near the wall of flames. Instead, it was a sea with a mild climate. In the seawater, there were cold currents and warm currents intersecting. As a result, they became a gentle warm current that washed the area. Han Fei perceived that there were thousands of people standing in different camps at the place where the currents converged. Han Fei didn't dare to spread his perception too early, so he immediately withdrew his perception as soon as it swept past. A few minutes later, when Han Fei and the others arrived at the place where the currents converged, he didn't look at the waterwood sky first. Instead, he looked at the large group of women in red. Yes, there were no men. They were all women. And they were all wearing seemingly thin clothes, as if the clothes would slip off their shoulders at any time. Han Fei looked around and soon found a woman among the group of women in red that he couldn't forget, Yang Ruoyun. When Han Fei heard that the Blood Sea Divine Wood City was full of big red trunks, he already knew where Yang Ruoyun and the others had gone. Where else could it be other than the waterwood sky? And this Blood Sea Divine would seem to be a special royal city independent of the waterwood sky and the Baibei royal city. For example, the Fish Dragon King didn't like the people of the Blood Sea Divine Wood City at all and threatened to kill all those in red clothes. Han Fei found that Yang Ruoyun seemed to be a person with great luck. In just a few years, he had gone through a lot of hardships to get to where he was today. But Yang Ruoyun had become a peak-level sea spirit in the blink of an eye. Interesting. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. He hadn't seen Yang Ruoyun for many years, and now she was no match for him at all. Han Fei suddenly thought of something. It was a pity that when he was in the level 3 fishery, he dug out a book from the big red trunks. It was a pity that the demon purification pot cleared it up during the tribulation. Otherwise, that thing would be of great use now. Of course, Han Fei didn't panic. That thing was evil, and as soon as it was taken out, it was full of demonic energy. Now that he had 2 sea-quelling bizarre treasures, he was no longer what he used to be. As if noticing Han Fei's gaze, Yang Ruoyun tilted her head and looked at him. However, unlike in the script, not only did Han Fei not move his eyes away, but there was even a weird smile on his lips. Yang Ruoyun frowned. For some reason, that person didn't seem to give her a good feeling. Next to her, someone said, Ruoyun, that half-mermaid seems to have a crush on you. Yang Ruoyun snorted. What an inferior bloodline. Someone chuckled. If I give it to you, I don't believe you won't drink it. The Fish Dragon King suddenly looked at Han Fei. Don't look at it. It's beautiful, but we'll still kill it. The Blood Sea Divine Wood City has always been at odds with our Baibei royal city. Those blood demons will bewitch you, swallow your blood, and absorb your soul. Don't be blinded by their beauty. Han Fei was puzzled. Did the Millennium Snapper have this ability? However, he still responded first, "You're right, Master Dragon King." Han Fei glanced at Yang Ruoyan one last time and then looked at the Shuemu Heaven. On the Shuemu Heaven's side, there were people from all 4 clans. In this trip to the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, the Shuemu Heaven had the most peak-level law enforcers, followed by the Insect Clan, and then the Sky Clan. However, among the remaining tree demons, there were a few little tree men that caught Han Fei's attention. Normal tree demons were mostly in the shape of trees, but the roots under their feet were like legs, so they weren't slow at all. If they were on the ground, they could still drill into the ground, but they could drill many times faster than you. However, among the group of less than 100 tree demons, Han Fei found 3 thin little tree men with only a few leaves on their bodies, which looked like normal humans. These little tree men gave Han Fei the feeling that they were very similar to the little tree men in the deep-sea jungle in the level 2 fishery in the Blue Sea Town. Oh, no, not similar, but exactly the same. Wow! Han Fei thought to himself that he hadn't stayed in the Shuemu Heaven for long, and there were many creatures that he hadn't seen yet. Since there were little tree men in the Blue Sea Town, what did it mean? Why were there little tree men in the Heavenly Water Village? Was there really only one demonic forest channel in the Yin-Yang Heaven that could connect to the Shuemu Heaven? In fact, Yang Ruoyan's appearance had already revealed the answer to Han Fei. The seaborne grassland in the level 3 fishery could also connect to the Shuemu Heaven. It could be seen that there might be many places connecting the 2 places, but most people didn't know about them. In the crowd, Han Fei also saw Shu Xiaoman. She was now fully armed, holding an eagle bow, with a saber on her waist and a serious look on her face. The only thing that didn't seem too serious was the insects lying all over the ground. There were one-horned longhorn beetles, golden tortoise beetles, blade centipedes, blue-eyed mantises, and ghost-eyed spiders. Anyway, the insect clan gave Han Fei a creepy feeling, as if there were countless species in their race. Because there were so many species, it was hard to defend against them in a fight. God knew what special abilities these different insects had. Han Fei glanced around and found that there seemed to be only about 1,000 people from the Shuemu Heaven, while at least 1,000 people from the 2 royal cities had come. Their purpose seemed to be very clear, which was to kill most of the people on the Shuemu Heaven's side. It would be best if they could kill all of them. They were all the backbone forces of the Shuemu Heaven. Of course, the Shuemu Heaven didn't want their peak-level law enforcers to die in the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm, so they sent as few as possible. However, before Han Fei could see where the experts were, he heard someone chuckle. Yo! Isn't this the Dragon King? We all thought you would go directly to the Dark War Port. Why did you go to the Realm of Ice instead? The one who spoke was a male half-mermaid who looked more handsome than the Fish Dragon King. The Fish Dragon King's face immediately darkened. Yu Hong, you should know your place first. Don't think that just because you came out to travel with me, you really think highly of yourself. A woman in a green dress floated on the surface of the sea and looked at the Fish Dragon King with a smile. Dragon King, many people are watching you. I hope you can maintain your pride and keep your 10th place on the prodigy list. The Fish Dragon King's face darkened. Shui Hongyan, don't interrupt. Otherwise, I will definitely go to your shell as a guest in the future. Humph. The clam girl's face turned cold. You should keep your position first. Han Fei couldn't help but glance at the Fish Dragon King. Good lord, it seems that there are a lot of enemies. Buzz. Buzz. Before the Fish Dragon King and the others could bicker, a peak-level explorer walked out of the void. Han Fei knew the people from the human clan. Maybe because of Yi Yuchen's breakthrough, there were 2 peak-level explorers from the Flying Feather clan in this trip. Han Fei had met Lu Lihan a few times. As for the Zerg clan, wait. Han Fei's pupils suddenly constricted. Lu Lihan and a few others came from the human clan, Cardinal and a few other big birds came from the Sky clan, a cross-eyed spider came from the Zerg clan, an old tree came from the tree demons. The appearance of the others might have been a coincidence, but the appearance of the old tree made Han Fei's heart skip a beat. Isn't this the old tree I saw when I first came to the Shuemu heaven? Isn't this old tree supposed to guard the outer gate of the demonic forest channel? Why did it come here today? Why did it come here? At that moment, Han Fei seemed to have guessed something. Someone had guessed that he was among the sea demons, so they deliberately let the powerhouses of the Shuemu heaven that he knew lead the team. What kind of message was this? Suddenly, Han Fei saw a young tree man who was looking around. Young tree man had been following him for 2 days, so she should be the one who knew him best. Therefore, if there was anything, he could ask young tree man directly after entering the Thousand Mountain Ancient Realm. Second update. Asking for votes, end of this chapter.